Very good morning, very distinguished participants. A very good morning. Thank you for joining our Independence Day lecture. Of course, the theme for this lecture is mitigating climate change through industry collaboration. We have an array of amazing speakers who would do justice to this theme today. Thank you so much for joining. I want to crave your indulgence that at this juncture, our MC is going to kickstart the event. But for the next 5 minutes, we would be allowing and accepting people into the webinar. So please, we kindly advise that you share this meeting link. You share this meeting link to as many participants as possible. Of course, this event is also live streamed on YouTube. So for those that can't join on Zoom, they can always search SP Abuja section on YouTube and join the event. For the next 5 minutes, we'll admit participants while we wait for our MC, of course, the section secretary of SP Abuja section, Madam Rekia Sambo, to coordinate the event. Thank you once again for joining and welcome to our Independence Day lecture. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Please, can you confirm you can hear me? I sincerely apologize. I've been having network issues. This is the third network I'm switching to. Can you confirm you can hear me?
Yes, we hear you, MC.
We can.
Hear you.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I can hear you clearly. Just
okay. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you. And then on behalf of the SP Abuja section, it's my distinct honor and pleasure to warmly welcome you to this Independence Day lecture, themed Mitigating Climate Change Through Industry Collaboration. We at the SP Abuja section have felt the need to add our voices in the conversation around climate change and how it affects the oil and gas industry and how it affects the country as a whole. My name is Rekia Sambo. I am the secretary of the section, and it also gives me ample joy to be your anchor for the first section of this program. Very quickly, we will be going into our safety brief. In SP Abuja section, safety is of utmost priority to us, and we continue to foster an uncompromising culture of safety first. I'm sure we're all aware that mobile communication devices in our lives these days have been a method that caused a lot of car crashes. I'm very passionate about this topic because I've had friends and I've had relatives that have lost through the bad habits of texting and driving. So we will be taking a 1-minute video. I'd like to kindly urge you to direct your attention to your screen as we take the 1-minute video. Can we have the safety moment, please? Thank you very much. I'm sorry I forgot to mention that viewer discretion was to be advised. I have decided to put off my video because I feel like it's kind of affecting my network. So please kindly, I'd like to crave your indulgence that I'll be speaking to you without a video until I'm very certain of a more secured network. Okay, so like I said, texting and driving is a bad habit that a lot of us are very fond of. I advise that we should try and stop this habit. For those of us that don't know, the statistics has shown that texting while driving is 6 times more likely to cause an accident than drunk driving. I'm sure most of us didn't know that. Also, answering a text takes away your attention for about 5 seconds. And trust me, 5 seconds is such a long time.
Is it connected?
It happens in a split of a second. Please, can we mute our mics if we're not speaking? So I was saying, answering a text takes away your attention for about 5 seconds. As much as you think that 5 seconds is a lot of time, but trust me, it takes only a split of a second for an accident to occur. It would also interest you to know that texting while driving causes a 400% increase in time spent with your eyes off the road. That is how much you are distracted. That's just how much you're distracted from actually focusing on what is in front of you. As soon as your eyes are off the road for a split second on your phone, you are distracted by 400%. So I'd like to just run us through some take-home tips that you need to know and ways to stop this bad habit. If it's important that you need to take a phone call, please pull over and park safely if you need to use your phone. For those of us that have very sophisticated cars, you can use your Bluetooth. If it's extremely important to take that call, or you can always just reply with a voice note. Always focus on the wheel and you'll always keep your eyes on the road. As much as you can, try and also keep your phones away from you so that you don't feel the need to answer any phone calls. You can turn your phone to do not disturb. You can download apps for, like I said, those of us that have very sophisticated phones. Think about other people's safety. It's not all about you. You can get yourself in an accident. You can get other people in an accident. And please try to keep your phone out of reach. Thank you very much. And I think we'll move on to the next item. Okay, once again, I'd like to very respectfully welcome all of us to this Independence Day lecture. Our theme for today is Mitigating Climate Change Through Industry Collaboration. And I'd like to run through a few introductions. We have lined up very erudite speakers to do justice to this topic. And I said SP Abuja section do not want to be left out in this conversation. So this informed our decision to take a theme concerning climate change and how it affects the industry as a whole. So moving on, permit me to recognize the esteemed presence of our erudite speakers. First and foremost, we have Mrs. Tubosun Afolayan. She's going to be our moderator for today. She's a certified engineer, professional, strategy and leadership engagement specialist. We also have in the house who has also joined us. I'd like to warmly welcome someone who has shown great tenacity, dedication, and commitment in mentoring, coaching, and grooming SPE members, me being one of them. Engineer Debo Fagbami, he's the Chief Operating Officer at Zenergy Limited and a BOT SPE Nigerian, he's a BOT member of the SPE Nigerian Council. Engineer Debo, you're warmly welcome. Also joining us all the way from Equatorial Guinea, we're joined this morning by Mr. NJ Ajuk. He's the Executive Chairman, African Energy Chamber, Equatorial Guinea. Thank you for taking out valuable time for such a beneficial course and the importance you've attached to this lecture that we're having. We also have in the house Engineer A.S. Abdulrahman. He's the Assistant Director, Head of Lab Services, Department of Petroleum Resources. I'm not sure I'm allowed to use Department of Petroleum Resources because I understand that DPR has been scrapped. So Engineer Abdulrahman, I don't know whether to introduce you as a member of the authority or the commission, but you're welcome and we're glad to have you join us today. Also with us this morning is somebody that we call a maestro in the Honorable Minister's Office. We understand he's an industry expert in gas, Engineer Justice Dere Fako. He's a technical assistant, gas business and policy implementation to the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum Resources. I think we should just free our hands and give a big round of applause to our erudite speakers who have taken out time for such a beneficial course. You're most welcome. I'd like to also move on to the flip side and also you are SPE Abuja Section Chairman, Mrs. Amina Damadami. Permit me to use the word chairperson. Mrs. Amina Damadami has joined us today. I'd also like to recognize the presence of all the Abuja Section board members who are with us today. My fellow colleagues that are here with us, all SPE members, thank you very much for attaching importance to this topic we're here to discuss this morning. So very quickly, I'd like to humbly hand over to the section chairperson, Mrs. Amina Damadami, to give us the welcome address. Mrs. Amina, you have the virtual space.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Rekia, for that wonderful introduction. Permit me to stand on duly observed protocol. And I would like to say, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay, great. So good day, everyone, and welcome our distinguished panelists, our moderator, our special guests. I think I saw Professor Ile has joined the call, our immediate past Africa Regional Director. Members, thank you very much for making out time to join this very important program. Now, May 26, 2021 was a landmark day for big oil. Its inner sanctums were put on notice by stakeholders that the companies must take meaningful steps towards addressing climate change. 61% of Chevron Corporation shareholders voted to approve a resolution seeking Chevron's reduction of Scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions. 3 directors who were nominated by a small hedge fund to make Exxon more accountable for all of its carbon emissions were elected to ExxonMobil's board of directors at Exxon's annual meeting. A Dutch trial court ordered Royal Dutch Shell to cut its greenhouse gas emissions by 45% by the year 2030. The most important strategic issue facing the energy industry today is climate change. As the Earth's average temperature continues to rise with the accumulation of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, the stable functioning of Earth's natural systems adjusts to the new high carbon reality, and society begins to witness the effects of an altered natural environment and its impact on our lives and livelihoods. Most greenhouse gases emissions are caused by human activity, including the burning of fossil fuels. This reality demands a change to our strategy, to our energy systems. Given this threat, governments are increasingly enacting policies to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, and investors in companies that sell fossil fuels are putting increasing pressure on management to show how they will navigate an energy system in transition. In addition, the economics of renewable energy are becoming increasingly attractive, creating potential alternatives to fossil fuels. This is all crystallizing into a stringent call for collaborative action by energy industry players. It is against this backdrop of our evolving industry reality that I welcome you all to this event, which promises to be an exciting discussion on the issues, prospects, and strategies for collaborative industry action towards mitigating climate effects in Nigeria. I welcome you all. Sit back and enjoy the program as it enrolls. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Amina, for that welcome address. Amina Madame is the section chairman, SP Abuja section. Thank you very much, Amina. So moving on very quickly, we'll get into the formalities for today's event. So at this point, I'd like to very diligently, most respectfully, and with every sense of humility, humbly invite Mrs. Tubosun Afolayo, who is the moderator, and she will be taking over the proceedings from me at this moment. But I'd like to just quickly run through her profile. Tubosun Afolayo, CPG, is a certified engineer, professional strategy, and leadership engagement specialist with mastery level expertise in petroleum energy development, energy mix sustainability, corporate communications, and entrepreneurship. She's a subject matter expert in hydrocarbon utilization and equity determination activities for Shell International Company, and a multiple award-winning earth scientist, geologist, seismologist with plus 14 years international oil and gas industry experience. She's a former banking and solid minerals executive. She's a publicity secretary of the Nigerian Association of Petroleum Explorationists and currently sits on the board of the American Association of Petroleum Geologists Division of Professional Affairs and is the Imperial Barrel Awards Competition Coordinator for Sub-Saharan Africa. She holds many first positions within the industry: first female publicity secretary, first female university assistance program chairperson, 2016, pioneer first recipient of the NAPE Distinguished Young Professional Award, 2016, and first African to receive the AAPG Global Young Professional Exemplary Service Award, 2019. Tumboso is a strategic business and communications advisor, an expert facilitator, engagement specialist, and high-performing leader. She's known for her strong flair for authentic, purposeful conversation style, as well as selfish advocacy for peer and youth empowerment. She believes profession and vocation creates a good balance. She graduated top of her class from the University of Ilorin, holds a PGD degree from Robert Gordon University and a certification in leadership and entrepreneurship from the China Europe International Business School. She's an alumni of Harvard Business School corporate program and the 2022 MBA cohort in energy and sustainability from the University of Cambridge, United Kingdom. Our philosophy to enjoy life's phases in God's grace and making progress a choice. Is that it, or is there another page? I'm sorry. Okay. That's such an impressive profile, Mrs. Tubosu. It just makes me feel that I haven't started in the oil and gas industry yet. So right now, I'll be stepping down for this moment and hand over the proceedings as she takes the moderation section for our Independence Day lecture. Mrs. Tubosu Afolayo, you have the virtual space. Thank you very much.
All right, excuse me. Thank you and good morning, everyone. We have both not started, Rick, here, and I can state that for a fact there's still so much ground to cover. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm not new to SP, even though it wasn't on the profile. I've attended a couple of activities that SP have done. I've done DLP for SP as well. So I am home, essentially. So thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to moderate this program. I just want to put a bit of perspective where we'll start, and then I will call our speakers to speak on the different identified areas on our topic. So please follow me very carefully. So we are here for this Independence Day lecture, and rightly so, mitigating climate change through industry collaboration. A lot of people tend to think that climate change conversation truly started in 2015 when we had the Paris Agreement. But no, the climate change revolution had been on us since 1900, and 1900 being the part where a Swedish, Not Armstrong is his name, he discovered that there are tiny concentrations of CO2 in the atmosphere. And over the years and decades, there has been deliberate activity to move us forward. The timeline where the clock really started kicking and where we, industry collaborators, policymakers, energy professionals, began to be more conscious about taking the right decision is 2015. I always like to remind us that climate change is a fundamental threat to development. However, climate change is also a fact. Impact across boundaries and across dimension, impact across our political, economical, our social entities, and there is a clear linkage beyond just an oil industry conversation. There is a strong linkage of it to livelihood, energy transformation, health, food, nutrition, water security. And I like the fact that it is of mutual interest. So it's not only solely a end user problem, it is also, a general populace problem. Another perspective I'd like to share before we get into the conversation, and I'll bring all our invited guests early, is the UN Sustainability Goal, number 17, actually highlights 17 for partnership. And that was important because we can set goals as much as we can, but if there is no partnership and collaboration, then those goals have no reason to pass. Industrialization, however, has also lifted millions of people out of poverty. It has created jobs, it has advanced technology, and it has increased social prosperity in countries around the world. Where some of us are late starter to industrialization, the point is there is a benchmark called industrialization, and we are not going to play ostrich and assume that we are there when we are not. And that's why I really like when the minister alluded to saying we are up for a just pathway to energy transition, to net zero emission, and not necessarily, we're not going to follow a path approach to it. And my final note would be, excuse me a bit, I want to move my slide very gently. This is a cartoon, if I may call it that I find very interesting. Let's set the scene, like I said, back in 2015, when climate change discussion really started, or we begin to be more conscious of it. But here we are. If you can interpret the image in your mind, it shows world leaders, and permit me if the optics does not really capture the African end of it. You know the challenge we always have when you are looking for imagery with Africa. But the world is drowning. Climate change remains a problem, and we need to tackle it very, very seriously. The SPE Abuja section have taken a big step of approach to it. In speaking to them during our conversation, one of their perspective was, we did this with HSC. We did this such that we embedded HSC into our critical culture as an organization. How can we get our stakeholders, ourselves, policymaker, advocacy maker, industry, and even our regulators to see the critical need of advancing, mitigating climate change into our conversation? And that's the focus for our event today. So on that note, I'd like to say welcome once again. I would now stop sharing. Please bring our speakers, our lecturers, I like that term as well, their profile up so we can get into the business of today very quickly. Great, thank you. So our first person, as Rekia mentioned, our first lecturer, so I will be using the term lecturer today, like I said, is Mr. Ayuk, NJ Ayuk. He is the executive chairman of the Africa Energy Chamber. He's the CEO of Pan-Africa Corporate Law Conglomerate, Centurion Law Group, and is an author. In fact, words have it on the streets that Mr. Ayuk is very passionate about Africanism. And I like the term, I'm getting used to it. His interests spans across major companies on investment strategy, one of the frontier that is leading a conversation with. Mr. Ayuk, I know that you are also heavily invested in the Africa Energy Week that is happening, and a lot of things are happening on the backdrop of this, our conversation. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to generate a communique. This is a chat to the Abuja chapter, where which we will be able to lend our voice in all the various weeks that are happening, and hopefully COP26. So Mr. Ayuk, over to you to give us your perspective on our topic, mitigating climate change through energy, through industry collaboration, pardon me, and you will be talking from the advocacy perspective. Please, Mr. Ayuk, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Such an honor to be here. And I think when I go, I would have you to speak at my funeral, because you kind of recount my life better than I even think about. I'm so honored to join this august panel. I think our continent, as we stand and where we stand, we are at a crossroads. A crossroads where we see a lot of people who have to deal with something where an Africa that we expect, and Africa that we want to see, is yet to have to fulfill its real potential. Let me start with this for a minute. We look at what is oil and gas and natural resource industry, and we say it's Africa's time. But now we're seeing where our continent has gone from a lot of ups and downs and ups and downs, and just right when we think we'll be recovering from COVID-19, we get hit by a climate crisis that we all have to deal with. I think most of these very smart people in this panel and really intelligent people watching would have to ask ourselves, how do we get from here? And I think this is going to be driven by having facts, science, and also pragmatism from an African perspective. Why do I say that? We talked, I went checked in, and I asked geologists this, and we were having some fun, and he wanted me to explain a few things. And I said, I'm not one of the best guys. But one of the things he told me was a discussion we had when we talked about decarbonization. You only decarbonize something that is carbonized. Our continent, Nigeria, and most of Africa has not been carbonized. So there is nothing to decarbonize. So we cannot have the same roadmap for decarbonization like you see with Western countries. But those challenges in the climate really matter today. It matters today for us in Africa. It matters today for all of us who are involved in this industry. The real question is that where do we go from here? How do we balance it? What are those common sense strategies, all those steps to take? There's a lot of discussion about these issues. We at the African Unity Chamber, we made a decision and accepted Prime Minister Boris Johnson's invitation to go to COP26. I will be going to COP26. I will participate in the discussions, at least for the first 3 days. I know a lot of people are skeptical that there's no much advocacy that we can do that would ensure that an African perspective is taken into consideration. I don't agree with that. And I used to be one of those skeptics. And I'll tell you why. Over the last 3 years, we've really drove on this issue. We have gotten people who we never thought could be allies, people we never thought would pay attention to Africa, people we never thought would even listen to when Nigeria says they would drive a gas ticket. I know a lot of people that are skeptical about that, but it is going to be the private sector. It is going to be everyday Africans and groups like yours that can really drive this to make it work. Because our continuous education, our continuous drive would really bring that. I'll give you an example. You go around the Gambia today, and it's something which a lot of us are really passionate about when you talk about inequality, or maybe even in Nigeria. If get into a hospital and they need to use ventilators, and you have no lights, you have no electricity, whether it's a young woman having a cesarean or it's somebody who has to have a ventilator because of COVID, they get hit and they will be stuck, and we don't know what the outcome could be, and we just have to pray. But I think Africans have prayed enough. We need to have science drive us. We need to have real action. And that's why, for me, for us at the African Unity Chamber, we support all that you do. We want to be part of this conversation. I would look forward to taking answers, sharing experiences, but I think it's possible. It's possible because when we start pushing government, nobody has accomplished that more than the Nigerians. Passing the Petroleum Industry Bill, now the Petroleum Industry Act, is a milestone. It's a little bit late, 20 years in making, but I think it's better late than never. And I think we hope that this Petroleum Industry Act could be something that we could drive, whether it is using gas, whether it is using LPG or other things to really mitigate climate challenges. So I'm going to stop, and I'm going to look forward to having a conversation with my co-panelists on how we all can collaborate, mitigate the climate challenges, but never forget that our African challenges are unique. Africa brings on board unique challenges, unique perspectives, and unique things that would really, really drive the future. Thank you so much, Dan. Such an honor, and I'm really honored to be here.
Amazing. You see, I wasn't wrong when I said you were Africanism, right? So you echoed that all over again. Thank you. I would not do the recap now. I would do it prior to us going into the panel conversation. But I have quite a few points that you have said. These are heavy. I heard decarbonization. I heard you talk about Africanism again. I heard you talk about advocacy, continuous education, and that's why we are here. Thank you so very much. The second person on my list is Engineer Debo Fagbami. If you would like to, please move the slide quickly. Okay. You have to indulge us for the breaks because, I mean, you know, the internet and how it can behave. So we all know Engineer Debo. He's the Chief Operating Officer at X Energy Limited. He is a Board of Trustee, SPE. He needs no introduction, so I'm not going to spend so much time in introducing him. I'm going to highlight, however, what he will be talking to us about. Engineer Debo would be sharing with us around the industry perspective of our topic, how we can mitigate climate change through industry collaboration. Engineer Debo, it's over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tubosun. Can you hear me, Tubosun?
Yes, please. You're very clear.
Okay. So I presume once the moderator can hear me, I believe everybody else can hear me. Do you mind if I share a couple of slides? Is that okay?
That's fine. I think that's
all right. I'm just trying to pull them up. Just bear with me. Just looking for my. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, all right. I'm just going to put it in slide share mode. I'm just looking for the button.
You got to go to view, the view, and then you use the drop-down button on your top. Where is this now?
I'm actually on the.
Enter full screen. That's it there. Down, keep going down. Yes, please. Right.
That's full screen. Anyway, you can see the slide anyway. I'm sure it's viewable as it is. It's the Apple thing. It's the Zoom window has hidden the button, so I can't see the play button for my.
This is good though. This is good.
It's good enough. All right, that's fine. So basically, thanks a lot to SP Abuja for inviting me to speak on this topic, speaking from the perspective of the industry. I'm an industry man. I've been an oil and gas man all my career. These days, I know we're being encouraged to say we are no longer oil and gas people, but we're energy people, as it were. So I'm going to be speaking from the energy industry perspective, as it were. So essentially, what I'm looking at here is, climate change mitigation and, initiatives around collaboration, within and around the industry that we all represent. So I won't dwell too much on, we all know, we may not know, but just to give, to set the scene, whether climate is sometimes being taken, or being used hand in hand, but essentially, weather basically is slightly different from climates. Weather is basically a short-term variation in atmospheric conditions, So when you look out your window, what you see at any point in time is the weather at that moment. What climate is basically the atmospheric condition that has been averaged over a longer period of time. So typically, because of the averages that have been taken, climate might be what you tend to expect over time, but weather is what you get at any given point in time. So by way of definition, weather can also always be defined as the atmosphere at a given time and place. So it could be weather in Port Harcourt, weather in Abuja, weather in Lagos, wherever it is, with respect to various physical variables such as wind, moisture, and all the various physical parameters that you tend to use to measure those changes. Whereas climate, on the other hand, can be defined as the various atmospheric conditions, which will now include things like rainfall and some other meteorological elements, within a region, a more enlarged space or collection of places, as it were, over a longer period of time. So when we look at climate change, which is what the subject of this discourse is all about, we're looking at, changes in global or regional climate patterns, that have come into awareness, as it were, in more recent times, more closer to the time we are right now, in the mid to the late 20th century, and is mainly attributed to increased level of atmospheric, occupation by carbon dioxide produced by the use of fossil fuels. And who are those responsible for producing fossil fuels? It's our industry, the industry that we operate in, that is the oil and gas industry. Now, if you take it a step further, right, the concept of greenhouse gas effect that comes into play, and the previous speaker did mention about carbonization, and and that is what we're talking about here. When the sun bombards the earth with its sun rays, so to speak, typically there is radiation, and the radiation is either reflected back into the atmosphere or sometimes absorbed by the earth. Now, what happens is that within the atmosphere, some of this radiation tends to be absorbed by the gases in the atmosphere. But because of the practices over the years and in recent times, activities, in industrial circles, be it oil and gas practices, industrial centers like factories, cement factories, and the likes of it, they tend to, burn out a lot of carbon that tends to capture this effect and prevent it from going out into the atmosphere. And in effect, it creates what you call the concept of global warming. So the core issue for mankind really is, in terms of mitigating climate change, right, is all about reducing the release of these greenhouse gases, right, which are essentially creating or causing some kind of a warming in our environment. Now, humanity, right, through what the United Nations is trying to do, and I'm glad that Tuba also mentioned it in setting the scene for this discourse. She mentioned goal 17, talking about partnership, but I want to focus on goal 7, where we're talking about affordable and clean energy, because when we look at pollution and emission of greenhouse gases and the likes of it, right? It's one aspect of the sustainable development goals that I think the oil and gas industry or the energy industry as well needs to focus on in trying to address whatever issues that need to point towards mitigating climate change effects needs to be looked closely at. And in so doing, there has been a commitment for an aspiration, more like, for us to achieve net zero carbon emission by the year 2050. Now, for us to get to net zero by 2050, there is a requirement for an 8 action step by the year 2030 for us to be able to achieve 7 things. Now, I'm going to come back to this slide a little later in the presentation, but very quickly, just to run through it. First thing first is we need to increase solar and wind capacity to about 500 gigawatts. We need to eliminate most of the electricity we generate by coal. Now, this might not affect Africa, and indeed, the previous speaker mentioned it. We do not, African carbon footprints due to coal generation is probably non-existent. Right? We also need to maintain current natural gas generating capacity for reliability, right? We need to increase zero emission vehicles as much as possible in terms of the sales share by as much as 50%. So we need to have more zero emission vehicle sales across the globe. We need to increase our sales share of building heat pumps to 50%, and all new vehicles and appliances must meet very strict building codes to be able to have or achieve the required energy efficiency goals. Now, we also need to increase our sales share of building heat pumps to 50%, and all new buildings and appliances need to meet strict efficient energy goals as well. R&D is also very critical in this space, and R&D for carbon capture, sequestration, and carbon neutral fuels have to go up whether we like it or not. And this is, I think, where the industry needs to put in a lot of effort, as I'm going to speak a lot on this shortly on my presentation. And of course, we need to build electricity transmission and pipeline grid for carbon dioxide and hydrogen gas. So some of the mitigating strategies that we need to be looking at right now is, for instance, we need to retrofit buildings to make sure that they are more energy efficient, right? So we need to walk our talk, because some of these things is not just knowing them and talking about them and just speaking about them as it were. There's a lot of building and construction going on, even within the industry. Within our industry today, our regulator, the Department of Petroleum Resources, is constructing their head office. Several independent companies are, constructing head office all over the place. And I feel this is the opportunity for them to be able to apply some of these principles, to start retrofitting and trying to achieve net zero building efficiencies into some of their strategies. We need to adopt renewable energy sources, solar and small hydro strategies as well in some of the things we do. We need to help our cities develop more sustainable transport systems, right? Electric vehicles need to start, cleaner fuels our vehicles need to run on cleaner fuel sources, and we need to promote more sustainable use of our land, and we need to approach deforestation as carefully as possible. So with all of this within the scheme of what we're talking about, our industry's response has to be one of collaborative partnerships. And I think that is where right. As an industry, our most credible response, to all of this is for us to invest in collaborative partnerships across all stakeholder groups. Now, if you run a quick fact check, right, in our industry today, in the world today, over 1 billion, almost 1.5 billion people around the world still rely on traditional fuels like charcoal and wood to meet their basic electricity needs. And these are mostly in the developing world, in Africa, in Southeast Asia, and some places in South America. By the year 2035, which is already approaching the net zero target, global energy demand is expected to grow by more than 50%, and even faster in some of these developing countries we're talking about. Now, all these new consumers are going to require clean energy, which is going to keep them safe and will not hurt them or even hurt the environment as it were. Now, global emissions will need to, first of all, peak by 2030 and then decrease to net zero by 2050 if we're able to meet or stay within those safety limits that have been established by the Paris Accord. Now, getting closer to home in Nigeria, our industry is over 50 years old, and economic development, despite an industry that is that old, has been poor or probably even non-existent as it were during this entire period of time. We have the industry mostly dominated by multinational players. In other words, international oil companies, multinational service companies. And I tell you that most of them, you can check the facts and figures, most of them have invested almost nothing in R&D spent over the years in time, despite their joint operating agreement requirements. And I'm talking of investments within the country. A lot of them have been making investments, but not in Nigeria, but probably in their home countries. I don't want to mention names, but if you check the facts and figures, a lot of these multinationals have actually spent a lot of time and effort in R&D efforts, back in their home environments. The facts are there for us to check out. So this brings me into the concept of what I want to talk about, which is the concept of joint industry projects. Now, joint industry projects basically are ways whereby we can carry out very expensive research and development projects, whereby the cost can be spread over a number of interested parties, and therefore we build some level of economics of scale. So we create some kind of a strategic project vehicle that would enhance the development of technology and retention within the host country that is trying to propagate some of these methodologies. Now, one thing is that we are trying to build capacity within the core skills that are required in that particular industry. And of course, our test case in this case is the oil and gas industry or the energy industry. Now, we also want to make sure that we're going to channel the R&D spend into the economy of the host country. So for example, if I pick up Shell, for instance, as an IOC, right? If they're going to be involved in a JI, in a joint industry project, right? Whatever it is, has got to create composite knowledge that is going to be retained and a composite value that is going to be retained within the economy of the host country, in this case, Nigeria. And not that they're going to invest something that's going to benefit the Netherlands or wherever their home country is. Now, some of the goals and objectives of joint industry projects are basically, like I mentioned, injection of composite value into the host country economy through the use, resident and utilization of resident technology. Now, we also need to develop relevant technology skill sets within the Nigerian energy industry by identifying strategic projects. And all of this is geared towards, what goes inside mitigating climate change. So projects that are scoped around climate change initiatives or climate change mitigation initiatives are what we're talking about here. So we want to build capacity also in Nigerian institutions of higher learning. In other words, we're not going to leave out the academia because it's a collective and an all-encompassing stakeholder responsibility for everyone that is involved in the industry. The players, the regulators, the academia, the industry players, everything, call it whatever it is, the government and everybody else. And of course, we want to build industry-wide expertise at the level of the players within the country. And of course, channel all this R&D spend into the Nigerian economy, which I mentioned earlier on, which of course, up until now has been exported, out of the country. Now, I must mention that joint industry projects are not new globally, right? They've existed in certain other countries. In Brazil, Petrobras has done it before. At the time, there was a need for them to focus on deep water technology out of a necessity. Same thing with Malaysia. They use it to build capacity in Malaysian universities as well to promote learning.
Engineer Debo, if I may interject, I know we're getting into solution now, but would you mind if we take this during the panel conversation, please?
Okay,
so
that's
that
fine.
To talk. I see that your slides are still quite a number.
Okay.
Right.
So you want me to wrap up now, or?
Yes, please. Please wrap up. I'll bring the others up. Then we'll go into the panel conversations.
Okay, I'll just go to my last slide then, just to tell you, what I think we should build up on it. Right. So just by way of a quick action plan, right, and we can talk about the rest during the discussion. So for me, right, the recommendation, from an industry perspective here, is for us to identify 3 key R&D projects within our industry, right? The focus of us is research and development, right? So that we can align some of these strategic projects with capabilities of top service company providers, right? And obtain a commitment from the IOCs with a minimum funding of seed capital for such projects, and then engage the academic community through strategic service company collaborative partnership. So basically, we're looking at the players within the industry to be able to come together, service company, the multinational producing companies, and of course within the academia to be able to come together and work towards addressing certain identified projects that they can research, to the core of the matter, and then push it into the industry as solutions to be able to address key components in trying to mitigate climate change. I will stop at this point. I'm sorry for stretching it a bit too far. Thank you very much, Tubosun.
Right, thank you very much, sir. No, it was rightly so. I just noticed that you were going into solution, and I wanted that as a response.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So let me, a quick recap like I did for Mr. Yoke. I heard you talk about with emphasis on the JIP, and I see some questions on that already. I like when you did the fact check. The fact check kind of rounded up on it on Africa. Just to mention here that coal actually supplies some. Coal is actually the resource base for some African country. South Africa is the case in question here. They actually depend on coal. So there is that dependency, even in the African space as well, which comes to your solution around, we must then think about it in terms of GIP. How do we truly ensure that we retain the critical knowledge base? How do we ensure that when we even make this solution in terms of R&D that you have proposed, how do we ensure that it feeds our populace? Because there is also a population growth that we are having to grapple with. You also talked about the getting to net zero emission by 2015. Is this a realistic number? I guess it's one of the things we'll also be talking about during our panel conversation. The core issue remains, and that was what you started with. How do we reduce the release of greenhouse gas emission into the atmosphere? That's the core issue, and those are the solutions that we will craft to mitigate climate change. Thank you very much, sir. I'll go quickly to Engineer Abdurrahman. Yeah, I said that correctly. As introduced, I don't want to also make the error of saying DPR, so I will leave it at Engineer A.S. Abdurrahman. He is currently working in the Health, Safety and Environment Operations Division of the DPR, quote and unquote. He's participated in several technical review, workshops, seminar. He's also part of the committee that reviewed the EGASPIN. We are all familiar with that, the environmental guidelines and standard for the petroleum industry in Nigeria. He's presently the Assistant Director and Head of Laboratory Services. He will be speaking to us on the regulatory perspective of our topic. How can we mitigate climate change through industry partnership, collaboration as well? Over to you, Engineer Abdurrahman.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm sure there are people from other climes who are part of this activity today. I feel honored, and there's a sense of profound gratitude to the SPE for honoring me to speak on mitigating climate change through industry collaboration. Let me quickly dive into the discussion by quoting one of very few personalities that have been looking at their profile over time. Sheikh Zaki Yamani, former petroleum minister for Saudi Arabia, said in the past that the Stone Age did not end for the lack of stone, and the oil age will not end long before the world runs out of oil. This is a rider to the fact that we know that developed economies in the world rode on the back of crude oil to economic stardom. And Dr. Nicole Nakali of Crystal Energy in London also posited that it takes about 50 to 60 years to transit from one energy source to another, using the example of coal, which started in the between 1600 to and the early 1900. Very quickly, like I said, I'll be speaking as a staff member at the directorate level of the Nigerian Upstream Regulatory Commission and Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, just to clear the air, because we got these invites prior to the scrapping of the Department of Petroleum Resources. So having said that, we are going to look at the presentation in the following sequence: scope of regulatory activities or to our future plans. Like I said, this presentation was done, taking into cognizance the activities of both the defunct, all the activities embedded in the defunct Department of Petroleum Resources, which of course gave birth to the authority and the commission. That's in a nutshell. This slide you are looking at, in a nutshell, gives you a bird's eye view of what we've been dealing with and what we've been handling and encouraging in the oil and gas sector. We are an energy country, like Engineer Fagbemi said. We have to provide energy for the population of the world, and we'll be doing it. The regulatory framework in the oil and gas industry in Nigeria is guided by this particular slide. We have the acts, which are legislative provisions enacted by the National Assembly. Regulatory provisions are provided by Minister of Petroleum Resources. Those are regulations. And then the guidelines, of course, and procedures that are issued from time to time by the CEO of the agencies so created and empowered by government of the Federal Republic. As a background, we know that human being action accounts for about 1.1% decrease in global warming. Fossil carbon dioxide emission of 34.6 gigatons of carbon dioxide in 2020 was 1.98%, 1.98 less than the total 2019 levels. Of course, this is due to COVID. Global emission need to be less than 15 gigatons of CO2 equivalent. The current unconditional NDC to attain 2 degrees is to attain 2 degrees and less than 32 gigatons for 1.5 degrees goals, according to UNEP. The Paris Accord, these are some of the aims and what we intend to achieve in endorsing the Paris Accord. It aims to put appropriate financial support, transfer and enhance capacity building, limit global warming to well below 2 degrees, and pursue effort to limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees. That is the 1.5 degrees challenge that has been the mantra for a lot of organizations and countries in the world. Nigeria in 2016, between 2016 and 2018, submitted its intended nationally determined contribution. We submitted the National Action Plan for Short-Lived Climate Pollutants, SLCP, and existing guidelines and policies on air quality and gaseous emission management have addressed in many of our activities through government rules. The NDCs, as we all know, are special purpose vehicle for climate action. Regular reporting of emission and implementation efforts by all parties. If you look at these quadrants, mandatory cycle of NDC, first submission by 2021, which has started, and it all incorporates feedback mechanism through global stocktake and transparency framework. Let's take the next slide. From our national determined contribution perspective, if you look at the map on the left-hand side, the black line represents business as usual. Continue business as usual, flaring, unrestricted, all other business we do it as we normally do, without any mitigation action. This is where we're going to end up. However, with condition, unconditional process, the red line represents the unconditional. In which case, we put in mitigation action. We are going to arrive at this, and in 2030, we are going to end up reducing our activities, our footprint by this amount. With condition, the green line, which also represents the support that will be provided through the Paris Accord, we are likely to be better off, and we are going to look at the green line. The whole idea is to remove about 64 million tons per year of greenhouse gas annually in the year 2030. The National Action Plan, which we are all privy to in the country, all the sectors of the Nigerian economy that have been identified to contribute to this this activity have been highlighted in this document, and it is available. I think if you want a copy, you get across to the Department of Climate Change in the Ministry of Environment. So the document is there, and one of the key deliverables is the implementation of pathways for reduction of short-lived climate pollutants. One of those identified SLCP is methane. As you all know, methane, HFC, CO2s are all components of greenhouse gases. And if you look at the degradation of methane, it will take about 10 years for methane molecule to degrade to CO2. So it's actually confirmed to be more deleterious and harmful to the environment and the denizens of the earth if nothing is done and you are allowed to accumulate over time. It has about 80 times global warming potential, more than carbon dioxide. So in all ramifications, we need to focus our attention. We have identified that on reducing methane and ensuring that actions are taken to mitigate its release in the Nigerian oil and gas sector. The mitigation actions in the National Action Plan identified 22 mitigating measures across all sectors. These are highlighted here from transport, residential, oil and gas industry, waste management, agriculture, power, energy, and all that. For the oil and gas, our goal is to ensure that we eliminate gas flaring, fugitive emission and leak control, methane leak reduction. We hope to achieve 100% gas flaring by 2030. That is elimination of gas flaring by 2030, 50% of methane reduction by 2030, and 50% methane reduction from all facilities also by 2030. What is the strategy available for us? One, from our regulations, we have enabled these regulatory steps in the documents that I've listed here. With guidelines and policies, we also have in the red, in red here, all the documents that are already in use in the industry. Of course, the PIA has already subsumed powers of the Petroleum Act of 1969 and all other laws that have been in use prior to this time. So we'll be talking in terms of PIA and not in Petroleum Act of 1969 going forward. These are some of the ongoing activities that we have been giving out. We have given out to the industry in terms of guidelines, quarterly submission of GAG and methane inventory, inclusion of data obtained from leak detection in their quarterly environmental compliance monitoring. We, as an organization, we've adopted the COMA country methane tool software to determine our baseline, and then we do data collection from emission from equipment inventory and using flare efficiency parameters. Of course, with the equipment inventory, we will be using the emission factors of the various equipments to generate information about how well these equipments are in performance, in terms of performance. As an organization, also before October 1st, we had about 24 ongoing gas flare projects at FEED, detailed engineering, construction, and pre-com stages with total throughput of more than 1.1 billion scoff, about a billion scoff of gas will be taken off the stack, the flare stack, when these projects are fully commissioned. Other mitigating approaches to be adopted will include the use of pneumatic system, glycol dehydrators driven by electricity or instrument here, use of dry seals instead of wet seals for centrifugal compressors, regular maintenance of reciprocating compressors or replacement with high emission or replacement. When high emission are observed or directing them to capture systems, carbon capture, as the engineer has said, we're also looking at
just to be sure, Amina, can you hear him, or it's me with the network problem?
No, I can't hear him either. Maybe
I think we have lost him. We're having serious network issues in Abuja. I've switched to like literally 3 networks, so I can understand what the issue is.
Okay. I think we'll just give him like a minute to see if he can come back in. I reckon he would also be trying to sort this out at its end. He has about 3 minutes more into his presentation before we then move to our final speaker and then start our panel conversation. So please, participants and everyone on board, please indulge us. We are not new to network problems. This is one of also the gains, I'll say, of COVID, to make us realize that industrial-wise, when we talk about industrialization and moving our data extensions forward, there's still a lot to be done. On top of this also is the need to think about it, that gas really powers energy, and energy is life. So we'll wait one minute and see if we can have him back very quickly. What you can also help us do is to try to call him on his phone. He may not even be aware that we can't hear him. So please try to reach him and let him know. Okay. All right, so I guess we'll move on. It's 1 minute past. I will take all of his other mitigations and solution crafted discussion during the panel session. So I'd like to just move quickly to Engineer Kifa now. If you would like to help me bring back our slide. Thank you. Okay, great. So the last, of course, not the least, based on our speaker series, and it will be talking around our policy perspective on our topic. We have Engineer Justice Derifaka. We are all familiar with him. He currently is the technical advisor to the Minister of State of Petroleum. So we are here to hear from you. If you would like to please move to the second slide, I would like to just run through his profile very quickly. Next slide, please. Right. So, like I mentioned, he is the technical advisor on gas business and policy implementation to the Honorable Minister of State Petroleum Resources, Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources, as we know it. In his role, he drives the national, please take it back one bit, one step. You moved so quickly. One step. I can call it up on my head.
Sorry, network. I didn't even realize it.
Yeah, I reckon. Okay. All right, so he's currently the technical advisor on gas business and policy implementation to the Honorable Minister of State, the MPR as we call it. And in this role, he drives the national gas policy implementation agenda built on creating policy goals for the federal government in the gas section, vis-a-vis removing the barriers affecting investment and development of this sector. He also doubles as the program manager in charge of Auto Gas Subcommittee in the National Gas Expansion Program. We know that he is, like I like to call him, the Mr. Gas. That's my name for you for this lecture section. We are pleased to hear from you, and please, now is the time for you to talk to us around policy perspective. How are we crafting our policy, bearing in mind that there is a climate change conversation that is going on, and we have a peculiar need for power, a peculiar need for gas. And please, the floor is yours now. Great.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. Sorry. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you, SP Abuja, for the privilege for me to be with you today. I will skip a couple of my slides because that's a good thing about trying to be the last man standing. The other speakers have literally touched on areas I will speak to, so I will be skipping some of my slides. Okay, so from a policy angle, it's a given that climate change is real and it's happening, and we need to take it very, very seriously, even as we try to keep, like we say in federal government, that we will continue to explore for oil and gas. And of course, while we predominantly pursue the decade of gas mantra with a view to being the closest ally to renewables. And of course, society, regulations, and communities are moving, and there are great expectations from society, plus the Paris Agreement that most of the speakers have alluded to. Now, in doing all of this, one key thing that we can equally adopt in this regard is the deployment of technology, including digital technology. So what this means is that change needs to happen across all sectors of our activities, the way we use energy, our national policies, including those that will benefit mankind in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. So yes, indeed, the world needs, Nigeria needs, Africa needs more and cleaner energy. And like it's been said, we need this energy for our livelihood. And as the global population increases, income rises, demand for energy will grow. But one key thing is that we need to address the stress on the environment, which again takes us to today's topic of climate change, which for once is now on the hot burner on the agenda on a global scale. And like we know, presently today the population is 7.5, and by 2050 it will be 9.5. And what this means is that there will be more demand for energy, and Africa will account for 50% of that increase, whilst we're even in darkness. Now, when you look at that number, Nigeria as of 2017 was number 7 in the League of Nations with the highest population of human beings on the face of the earth. And it's been projected that by 2050, we will be the 3rd most populous nation on the face of the earth. What this means, again, is that we need to begin to see how we can get energy for our people. Of course, try to use all available energy resources. And as you can see, 95% of those living with electricity in the world are from sub-Saharan Africa and of course developing countries. So in a nutshell, what this says is that we're talking about population versus access to energy. Now, access to energy comes with its own hydra-headed monster, climate change, because those are the twin issues bedeviling society, as it were. And that leads us to, okay,
I just came back now.
Those people are complaining they've not eaten. Can you give them food to eat, please? So talking about climate change, the Paris Agreement, what this means is that there are 3 fundamental issues that brought to fore with respect to the Paris Agreement. Number 1 had to do with poverty. Number 2, the SDG 7, which had to do with clean energy for all. And then number 3, which is SDG number 13, climate change. Now, what at the COP21 in Paris, Nigeria was part of the signatories that agreed to the UNFCCC to make sure that we reduce our pre-industrial level in terms of our greenhouse gas emission. And Mr. President agreed to that and came back to Nigeria and ratified the UNFCCC and ratified those agreements. So a couple of persons have spoken to the 2030 agenda as it connects with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So I wouldn't want to bore you with this slide, including this one. But one thing I want to mention here is that the SDGs, also known as the global goals, are a universal call to action to end poverty, safeguard the planet, which ties to climate change, the topic of today, and for government to come up with their policies across the world, and of course ensure that all people enjoy prosperity and peace by the year 2030 and beyond. At the heart of SDGs, one key thing is that it's a promise to leave no one behind. So moving on, I will skip this slide again because the previous speakers have made comments around those areas. Though one thing I really want to mention again for us to have an understanding is that when we look at the new goals, they recognize that tackling climate change is an essential for sustainable development plus poverty eradication, which is SDG number 1. And if you look at SDG 13, like I did mention, which you will see subsequent slides, it speaks to for us to promote urgent action to combat climate change and of course the hydra-headed impacts that it brings to us. So the 10 key facts about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, as you can see, one of which is addressing climate change. It's one of the most pressing issues of our time because it affects every country on every continent. So this gives you an overview of the 17 SDGs, which has 169 targets and around 232 indicators across board. So as a country, even as a nation rather, whilst globally the SDGs look to address the various wants and needs, it equally ties into people, prosperity, peace, and of course, partnership like the moderator did mention, and I'm looking at what our planet has for us. So the SDGs are interconnected, interrelated, and their indivisible entity. So speaking on today's topic, the climate change, mitigating climate change, whilst others look at the adaptation approach, we need to address one key thing, which is to integrate climate change measures into national policies, strategies, and of course, planning. Now, if you listen to the speaker before me, my friend in the industry, Abdul Rahman, who I haven't seen for well over 5 years, thanks to SP Abuja, we have national policies. So if you look at the national gas policy, it speaks to government bringing in utilizing our abundant natural gas to address climate change issue. And then Mr. President, when he left COP21 in Paris in 2015, got back home and of course agreed to the intended national determined contribution, which is now the national determined contribution that we are taking to Glasgow in the next 1 or 2 weeks for COP26 to discuss. So the target 13.3, which equally talks about improved education, awareness raising, which, and thanks to SP Abuja and the leadership, this is one of the targets of the SDG 13, to create awareness and of course human and institutional capacity on climate change mitigation, adaptation, impact reduction, and of course early warning. So I will speak to some of those thematic areas as it were. Now, like I did earlier mention earlier on, meeting our global demand for energy while tackling climate change and pollution is a fundamental challenge that we all face. Now, using natural gas, we believe that we'll make that the right choice for us to expand the role of gas, which we have in abundance as at today by the defunct DPR. We have 206.53 trillion cubic feet of gas, and there's an upside of unproven reserve of over 600 trillion cubic feet of gas. So we can do a lot with that. So using natural gas across the world, even in Nigeria, is already addressing the issue of the carbon dioxide and improve air quality. And Mr. President did rightly mention, he said, when we declared 2020 as a year of gas in Nigeria, it was a bold statement. Some people thought it was a buzzword. Some people said it was a catchphrase, but it was a deliberate intention of government to demonstrate that Mr. President has a resolve for gas development and utilization in country, and it is a national priority. So all of this will begin to address the issue of climate change and begin to reduce the impact of what this does for us. So ladies and gentlemen, even as I continue, we have one thing to understand, that the world is already around halfway to that 2 degrees centigrade limit. Now, this poses a significant challenge, and putting that into context, it means that we need to remove around 200 million cars from the road, which is equal to every car in Europe. And that will save just 1 billion tons each year. So in simple definitions, I won't want to discuss what climate change is all about, the definition of climate change and how it connects to global warming, because my brother and my friend Fabumi has done, should I say justice to it? He has done justice to it. So I won't want to speak more. But ultimately, what this means is that global warming is just one side of the much larger problem of human-caused climate change. So it's just a subset of the bigger picture that climate change brings to bear. And with CO2 being the most important in the oil and gas sector, which Fabumi and of course Abdurrahman has talked about, we need to address these issues head on. So giving you some pictures, this is the earth that we all have as our home. It has water, oxygen, and of course, a hospitable climate. But this is what is happening to the world population. The climate, the challenge is sustainable management of an ever-changing planet. We have the issue of sustainable energy, which I spoke to earlier on. We have the issue of carbon-intensive energy usage, which is damaging our environment. Of course, potentially changing our climate, which is why we said climate change, by the way. Now, in Nigeria, with over 176 gas flare sites, we flare a lot of gas, and you can see from the picture, this gives you the footprint, the landscape of the gas flare that contribute to climate change of global warming and of course, cause pollution. So as a nation, we're the #7 in the League of Gas Flare Nations, and with the Nigerian Gas Flare Commercialization Program, which is now being managed by the Upstream Commission we want relegation in this league of gas-fed nations. The challenge equally about climate change talks about food security, which is another big problem. Every other year, we hear about burning bushes all over the world, including in Nigeria. And there's climate change, of course, by research and studies, it's projected to decrease agricultural productivity in the tropics and subtropics for almost any amount of warming. So this is a big challenge, not forgetting sustainable forestry as it were, because so if you look at our biodiversity footprint, that is another challenge that climate change will bring to bear. So looking at all of the government in its wisdom said, no, we need to have an implementation plan and strategy with regards to our national determined contribution. Because climate change, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, is projected to increase forest productivity, but forest management will become more difficult due to an increase in pests and of course fires and destruction. We have issue of water security, maybe not part of some part of the country, but in other parts, in other climes, people pay heavily to just get water to drink. And 1/3 of the world's population is now subjected to water scarcity. So all of these issues are attributed to climate change. Of course, our fisheries, pollution of our water bodies by usage of different chemicals, and which is why my friend Abdul Rahman, if you go to 10 DPR now upstream, the commission will scrutinize your application before you use any chemicals for drilling operations in the oil and gas sector. We equally have the use and of course conservation of biodiversity, like I talked about earlier on. So all of these pictures gives you one thing in mind, that climate change will exacerbate the loss of biodiversity. And we know what biodiversity is all about. It has a lot of benefits to mankind, and of course, maintenance of our human health, maintenance of our fiber production. So climate change, ladies and gentlemen, will affect the ability of ecological systems to provide a range of essential ecological goods and services for us if we don't do the right thing and they do it as at when due, and which is now. Like former UN Secretary General would say, there is no plan B when it comes to planet Earth. So moving on, that's the way we produce energy and use energy today is not sustainable. But again, listening to the previous speakers, I think I agree with them. The truth of the matter is that we can actually deploy technology, different form of technologies, while we go ahead to progress with our exploration of oil and gas, and why we predominantly use gas as the closest ally to renewable. So this needs to have a new direction. So former UN said something, he said, if we don't respond to our issues, if it is not reversed, it means it is a recipe for disaster. So climate change is not about government, it's about individual contribution, it's about family contribution, it's about community contribution, it's about local government contribution, it's about entity contribution. Because if you look at the climate change impact, particularly from a social impact point of view, you find out that over 2,400 million people are impacted by water shortages from the pictures you've seen. Now, from the economic impact, acting now to mitigate that change will cost around 1% global GDP. But if we do nothing, ladies and gentlemen, we will have to adapt, and it will cost us around 5 to 25%, if not more, of global GDP. I didn't want to boast with the percentage that Nigeria will be having when it comes to those issues. So these are some key findings regarding climate change that we are talking about today. It's not just an environmental issue, it is a developmental issue. So future changes in atmospheric composition and climate are inevitable within increases in temperature. Now, there are both beneficial and adverse effects of the impact of climate change. But the larger the changes and the rate of change in climate, the more the adverse effects predominate with developing, which is predominant rather with the developing countries like Nigeria being the most vulnerable. So because developing countries, we are the receiving end of this deal. And if you listen to some of one or two of the previous speakers say, the developed world have used their coal, even their season, their coal today, and they're telling us they don't want to invest in oil and gas in Africa. Today, in the UK, in some parts of China, they've started activating, they're running on their coal-fired plants to generate power and electricity. And then this will come back to tell us something different. And they tell us not to use gas, but they're using gas. So who do we believe? And I think that's one thing the likes of my friend Ayob and some other leaders we are taking to COP26 in the next few weeks. So again, from a government point of view, there are many opportunities, including technological options like I did mention, to reduce the near-term emissions, but barriers to their deployment exist and cost estimation vary greatly. So the capacity of a country to adapt or mitigate can be enhanced when climate policies, like what we have, are integrated into the national development policies. And if you can remember, for those of you that are aware, the Economic Recovery and Good Plan captured extensively in detail the international determined contribution, which was now expanded to be a standalone document as the NDC. So again, like I mentioned, Mr. President was at COP25, who joined other leaders to ratify the agreement. So the climate change, one key thing is framework, policy framework, climate change for emissions and concentrations, impact on human and natural resources when it comes to adaptation, and of course the socioeconomic development part that will bring economic growth, technology, population, and one predominant thing, governance. So these are the three hard truths. More energy means more CO2 emitted at a time when climate change looms as a critical global issue, even as a continental issue for us. So in terms of addressing all of those, that is the complex issue, we need to have regulations, we need to understand our physical environmental impacts of water stress, climate extreme weather conditions. We need to look at technological changes, and of course, changing consumer behavior, which is very, very important in that climate, because by the time when we begin to address the way humans consume energy and the pattern with which they consume energy, that will address some form of the climate change issues that we have. And that's one thing the national determined contribution is seeking to address. So there are responses, two major responses to climate change issue: mitigation and adaptation. And for mitigation is a global responsible thing to do, while adaptation is a locally responsible thing to do. So both of them has a pros and cons, but predominantly mitigation is the right way to go. So there are 6 parts I'd like to share with us that lead to reduction of these issues, increasing the efficiency of oil and gas operations, of course, with use of technology, aggressively developing low CO2 sources of energy, including natural gas and low CO2 fuel options, industry to work with government, and of course, advocating the need for more effective CO2 regulations, which we have. So for those of you that are not privy to the PI 2021, it captures everything that my friend Abdul Rahman and his colleagues in the defunct DPR, now the upstream commission, will be doing when it comes to health, safety, and environmental management in the oil and gas sector. So the options for change, enabling technologies, look at in the ways energy is produced, emissions reduction and mitigation. So a further shift to natural gas, renewables, yes, though they cannot provide all the energy that the world needs, they can just give around 20–25% because they are intermittent. And of course, in the ways energy is consumed, which I did mention, that has to shift. Mass transportation, road transport. Now we're trying to introduce auto gas, where you use gas to run the vehicles. Buildings, low energy appliances like the bulbs that we use in our homes. And then there need to be, moving on, there need to be that multi-stakeholder handshake to address the mitigation measures, and of course, the adaptation measures. So civil society is involved in this, the industry and the associations are there, the academia, thank God Professor Ledger is listening, is there, the industry is there, and of course, development partners, the World Bank, the USAID, and the rest of them are going to be in this space, which, by the way, they are working with the Minister of Environment to address this issue. So how can all of this be achieved? Through government policy, which is very, very fundamental, and which is why Mr. President at COP21 made a presentation, came back to Nigeria, ratified the agreement on climate change at the State House on the 28th of March 2017, and in June this year, he approved the revised nationally determined contribution for Nigeria that was submitted to the UNFCCC COP26 committee. And again, the House of Reps recently passed the climate change bill in June 2021. So from a policy point of view, government is not resting on its oars. They're taking it head on to make sure that we do the right thing. And of course, we commit to the Paris Agreement that Mr. President committed to. I will not waste much time on the NDCs because Abdurrahman dealt with that in detail. So I will just keep the slide. This gives you a snapshot of the NDC, shows the importance of tackling climate change in the context of sustainable development. Conditional commitment, which was before it became the NDC, it was an INDC, and that below business as usual projections by 2030, dependent on support from finance, technology, and of course, capacity building. So this shows you the different NDC targets for the different sectors for reforestation, climate smart agriculture, car to bus, improve electricity grid, end gas flaring by 2030. So that 2030 target is the World Bank global gas flare reduction target. For us as a government, government has pegged 2025 as a timeline for elimination of gas flaring, which is captured for the oil and gas sector in the NDC. So this gives you—
And engineer, if I may, I would like you to round up now. I want us to take more of this, your solutions in the panel session so that we can give every other person a time as well. Just give you some 2 minutes more, please.
All right. So in terms of sectoral action plans in the NDC, I just captured only that of oil and gas. But again, I won't want to waste much time because my time is up. But my friend Abdurrahman did mention most of those. But the key driver for the gas revolution, which you know again is the Nigerian Gas Master Plan and the National Gas Policy, the National Gas Expansion Program, the Decade of Gas Initiative, True Gas to Power, gas-based industrialization, and high-value export. So this gives you the co-benefit of the NDC impact and implementation, political support, public support, donor funding, like I talked about, which again will address most of the GHG mitigation, including poverty alleviation. So in wrapping up, ladies and gentlemen, 3 ways to reduce this issue is improve energy production, change the mix of energy products, store emissions in carbon sinks like the carbon capture, utilization, and sequestration that we have, that we know of, which the federal government in the Office of the Vice President is working with the International Energy Agency to address that. So this gives you an overview of what the CCUS and the CCS can do towards addressing climate change issues. So these are the technological paradigms that we need to adopt. And of course, there is one area that people have glossed over. There is a nature-based solution to climate change issues, which looks at to improve livelihood and local communities. Such projects have the potential to provide over 1/3 of the cost-effective climate mitigation needed between now and 2030 to stabilize warming to below 2 degrees centigrade. So I will leave here, I will pause here now because this is almost the last slide apart from my conclusion that addresses the 7 essential elements towards a net zero emission for the world: electrification of final energy, grow new energy system, energy efficiency, carbon capture, storage, deforestation. So ladies and gentlemen, we'll have choices to make which will define our future. We need to keep the world moving, but do it responsibly. And as a nation, we have chosen to work across a broad energy portfolio and playing a leading role in Africa in demonstrating ways to manage all of those issues. So first of all, for Nigeria and the world, that we need oil and gas for that matter, and we'll continue to produce oil and gas to develop our country, our continent, and move on as a continent. So now, the ability to manage CO2 is therefore a priority for the future development and growth of Nigeria's oil and gas industry, and government aim to have a reputation responsible CO2 management in that paradigm. So climate change, CO2 challenge cannot be met by a singular nation or a company or by the energy industry. So there needs to be a public-private partnership and a strong policy framework that is needed. I will stop here for now, and thank you very much.
Indeed, thank you very much, Engineer Justice, for that very detailed walkthrough on the policies that we have. Had I heard, like you alluded to, your take on the nationally determined contributions, as we call it, I like when you emphasize the fact that it was intended. So it has to be something that was fit for purpose for the Nigerian states. So we'll quickly take the next 10 minutes, please, for our panel conversation. If you can, I don't know how possible it is to please have your videos on, of course, and then pin our 4 speakers so that we can take the questions as we have them, please. But this has been, you agree with me that this has been very, very enriching, value-adding conversations to our industry from the 4 important perspectives. Every one of them mentioned the importance of carrying this partnership beyond the oil and gas industry. So this is not necessarily an oil and gas conversation. This is a world conversation. It affects biodiversity, it affects agriculture, it affects our social investment, it affects virtually everything. Engineer Abdurrahman, I'm going to quickly recap your conversation because the network threw you off. I heard you talk about, taking us through the act, the legislation, and the policies and the guidelines. That was rapid, so because it showed us the 3 dimensions of the government in terms of regulation and how they all feed into the purpose of, for the sake of this conversation, climate change. You also talked about how the efforts that has been done in terms of the National Action Plan of the short-lived carbon emissions. I think that's what you call it, the SLCP. You talked about it in terms of implementation of pathways for reduction of short-lived climate pollutants, pardon me. I like when you mentioned around the black carbon, the methane contributing, and I'm sure that a lot of these conversations don't actually hit that angle, to recognize the parts or the role that methane, which is an agricultural byproduct amongst the other things, the role that it also plays in this conversation, and of course the HSFC as well. And then we talk about the greenhouse gas emission and all the different plans that the regulators or the regulatory body has in place. Engineer Justice kind of helped you capped it off, and I know you were getting into there when he came into the conversation, and he talked about the various mitigation measures that had been done. He talked about the fact that we need to be realistic. 100% of gas flaring is our target for 2030. We are halfway there. You mentioned that and 50% in terms of methane, which you also alluded to, Engineer Abdurrahman. Policy initiative, you also mentioned on that in terms of the quarterly submission, Engineer Abdurrahman, how this is being measured, how the data now fits into the policy, and how this has also been used to craft the newly amended PIA. You talked about the quarterly ECM, how you use all of this data to make policy. So thank you very much for that contribution. Engineer Justice, I like how you started. You said great expectation from society. So you took us back to the fundamental of it's not a oil and gas or a fossil fuel industry problem. It is a general world pandemic problem. So in some ways, it really just does sound like a pandemic in itself. You talked about access to energy, population growth, the social measures, and the social inclusion part of it. You talked about how it will affect livelihood, the agricultural perspective, the food security, biodiversity, the fact that forestation is as important, because really the air we breathe in, I know that the plants really do have a part to play in it. And you talked about one thing that I know you and the Honorable Minister have been very passionate about, the decade of gas, the year of gas. And here we are again, and you talked about all right, I think I got mistakenly muted. And you mentioned around how we must how we must all co-create and come to the understanding that Nigeria, with our abundance of gas, it provides our opportunity for a clean energy, and we must explore that option. The UN perspective to it, you also shared that, and I really like one statement you made. The UN has that they will leave no one behind. So in leaving no one behind, you must also ensure that you co-craft a solution that is good for everyone. I have an echo, so I don't know if it's coming from me or my hand movement, but just so you can hear me, I want to be sure. Then you talked about synergistic opportunity in the NDCs. You talked about how we must ensure that supply of easy oil would also mean that it would affect mitigation and adaptation, the things that we are looking out for. There is a two-pronged approach. I know you said three, but I like to think about it in two. Improve energy productivity is also the way to store emissions. So when you improve productivity, you're also capturing emissions, right? Because you're talking about it in terms of sustainability, safe production, and a lot of things. And I like changing the mix. So we must come to accept that there is a mix to it. Renewable will be here. We must adapt to it. Will it power the oil? Will it power our houses, our lives? Maybe, maybe not. But we know that the fossil fuel is a long-term runner and it has a huge role to play. Thank you very much for your submissions, gentlemen. I would like, if you can all on the call, give a e-clap to our erudite presenters before I then take questions. Please give a e-clap to them. We've done justice. They said we have done justice to this topic. Highly educative insights. I'm reading from the comment now. And advocating for responsible energy management via policy implementation. I guess this also applies for advocacy, as we had heard Mr. Ayuk. He also applies for the industry perspective, as we heard from Engineer Pagumi, and also from the regulatory perspective as well. As we seek zero carbon reduction, can we meet the dates? Is one of the questions on my mind. Do you think we can meet the date? So this is my opening into our panel conversation. If you have questions, I see some questions, I will take it. But I will make sure that I take the questions that are specific around climate mitigation first. I see one on EGASPIN. I will take it if we have time, but we will go first. So Mr. Ayuk, thank you for your submission. The first question is for you. Africa remains a very dynamic continent. Do you see the opportunity for us to collaborate together when it comes to climate change, fossil fuel use, technological advancements? Do you see the opportunity for Africa to come together?
Thank you so much. And it's good to listen to Justice. I think he brings it home. And every time I read from him or listen to his thoughts, it's really great, and I really thank you for giving me a chance to be here. And to the other panelists, I had my pen and paper writing the entire time. It is amazing to see the level of depth, the level of technical grasp that we have just from Nigeria as a country. I would say where Nigeria goes, Africa goes. I do think your question is right on point. We do have a chance to collaborate, and we don't have an option to not collaborate, because not one African country can confront a tsunami that is before us. And, you know, my good friend Justice outlined some really great things that is happening around Nigeria. If this is a big country and cannot meet these challenges, then you don't expect Zimbabwe or Malawi or Tanzania to meet those challenges alone. So this must be a wake-up call for us as all Africans to collaborate together on driving. And I tell you one more thing. Yes, the UN will say there's no plan B for the earth. No one will be left behind. But the thing is that we want those words to become deeds that meet our needs. Because if you don't put action to it, then it means nothing. 2009, we had that guy from the UK, Gordon Brown. They had this climate mitigation fund, $100 billion till 2015. You had Paris Accord. 2020 to 2021, we asking where are those $100 billion? So you're telling Africans to trust you when promises made for 11 years, and $100 billion is nothing. It's nothing compared to what you are going to have to lose, or you're going to invest, you're going to really take on to meet the climate challenges. Europe is, the Western world Europe and America, we're talking about $5 to $6 trillion per year. And you had 100 billion for the what you would call least developed countries, and which most of Africa fits in. So if we don't collaborate and make our voices known, then it's going to be a big danger. And don't forget, we are the ones that are going to be best hit. Right now, you guys talking about Nigerians immigrating to different places. All of us in Africa are going to be running to Nigeria if this doesn't work well. So Justice, you better get a place for me. I'm coming. So it is that. And yes, 2030, 2035, electric vehicles, and how are we going to get there? But wait now, electric vehicles in Africa in 2025, 2035, that's good. I like that. But the truth of the matter is that most of the IEA predictions, which I have been against, I've always said, you can't drive electric vehicles if you're in the dark. You can't drive electric vehicles if you have no electricity. So you have to get back to energy access, making energy poverty history, really getting into dealing with those same issues. You can't have 600 million people with no access to energy or electricity in the entire continent, 900 million no access to clean cooking, and then you tell me about decarbonization. You know, it's like telling a fat guy, it's like telling a skinny guy to not get fat. It's like, what does that mean? You don't, like I said before, you don't decarbonize what is not carbonized. So the skinny guy is the Africa. So you can't tell us to not gain weight. And I still think we have a chance, which we're going into coal. Yes, again, we need to work together. But the big issues that we have to deal with, what justice is putting out there, it just would not work if we don't collaborate and have this strong African sense that tells them at core and say, if you continue your divestment campaigns and say, do not put money in Africa gas projects, do not invest in anything, then you're in trouble. They used to say coal was the bad one. We should need to get rid of coal, but no. Now they have extended until anything fossil fuels, oil, gas. So what's the need of having all these regulatory changes that my brother talked about? What is the need of having all these incentives to talk about decade of gas? There is no decade of gas if there is a divestment of investment from gas, because gas is going to require a lot of investment. That is, you will have to go look around Mozambique right now. Let's just walk away from Nigeria. Look around Mozambique. This is a country that was going to move. You need to stop fighting. Okay, those guys are crazy. You need to stop fighting. But this is a country that is going to move from zero to become the third largest producer of natural gas in the world, just beneath Russia and Qatar. Imagine if you take out and you say no more investment in gas. Let's cut it out. That's what they're telling us. So if you don't get Nigeria, Mozambique, Tanzania, Senegal, Equatorial Guinea, and our brothers up north in Algeria and Egypt collaborating together and really saying we need to protect gas investment. So decade of gas would be a great catchphrase, but then we need to have realities, because words have to mean something. Actions have to be done. And a lot of young people are really, really looking at us and saying, you guys don't mess it up. You guys don't mess it up. So Justice, we're going to cope. We need to collaborate. We need to, I get the hate mail from some people and saying, you the devil, you want to burn the earth, and how dare you. I don't even cook in my house. So how can I burn the earth? But we need to get to cope. We need to put out a very strong African position. I think it'll be treasonous for us to sign off again on these young Africans and bail out on them. and bail out on them. It would be treasonous if we go to court and we basically hand over Africa because we give up on gas. If we give up on that investment, 270 CF, Justice, maybe I'm right, 270 CF of gas in Nigeria. You're just going to throw it to the ground? That's tough. That is tough. And we don't look, sometimes we in Africa, we just don't look at it and we just say, well, we need to, we need to walk away from this. So I'll stop here.
I need to stop you.
Please
right.
do.
Thank
Please.
you so much. I need to stop you. Right. But you hit on all the right notes. And I'm going to take you first from the last statement you said. I'm not sure you even understand the impact of the word. You know, it just came right on. You said it would be treasonous to sign off on this young Africa. And it's something that we all need to think about. And we need to start thinking about all of that in terms of the challenges, because there will be challenges. We've not even been able to move away from just partnering with ourselves across borders. And now we have to deal with providing energy for ourselves. The next question is to Engineer Fagbemi. This is interesting, and I'll give you all the time. Amina, you have to indulge us. This conversation is important. We may probably run past the hour of 12, but I think this is necessary. Engineer Fagbemi, my thoughts around, the energy industry, and you say the oil and gas industry, sometimes we like to refer ourselves to the energy industry, is in twofold. Considering that the world perceives us, quote and unquote, as the major contributors to climate change issues, but our byproducts, people we sell this off to, do we have a strategy of bringing them into solution mode in terms of usage? When Engineer Justice was going to ring that in, he said, we have to think about this in three ways: energy provision, the mix, and of course, lowering emissions. But there is a perspective of how the energy is also being utilized as well. From the industry perspective, I would like you to end your voice. How do we bring our end users to these conversations? How do we ensure that the measures we put up from the industry perspective really do germinate first? I know that there will be measures and checks and balances, but how do we ensure that that does happen, please?
Yeah, thanks to Boson. Yeah, it's an interesting dilemma, right? We contribute to the issue that we're trying to deal with over here, in terms of emission. Yet, what we contribute, yields products that generate economic value at the end of the day. And when you look at the overall value chain that is generated by the industry, you can see that we create value all the way from upstream down to the downstream end of the industry, as it were. So when you look at the sum total of this, whether you like it or not, that's why I keep encouraging young ones behind us that this industry is going to remain relevant for a very long time to come, hate it or not. Now, that said, okay, there are a number of, there's one key point that I need to mention, when you look at the context, of what we're talking about today. One commonality that all the speakers today have touched on essentially is on the subject of gas utilization, gas monetization, and gas compression. Because we tend to see gas as a wasting resource, which is causing damage to the environment. And we're saying that an effort to clean up the environment in terms of trying to utilize gas into a sellable resource that converts it into sellable products, as it were. Now, there is this concept that was introduced by the United Nations as a result of the before the Paris Accord. I think it was the COP. I try to remember which accord it was now, but it introduced the Carbon Development Mechanism, whereby there is the concept of carbon trading, whereby you can have carbon footprints being captured in this part of the world, okay, where you have projects, not just in the oil and gas industry, but even in, for instance, the cement business, where you generate a lot of carbon dioxide or CO2 in the atmosphere, right? And you are able to trade off, right, and sell credits to countries or organizations in so-called category 1 countries in Europe and other developing nations. So what I'm trying to bring out here is that for those who are familiar with it, in the gas space, gas projects, are quite, money consuming in terms of the capital outlay, that you need to be able to set up projects. So if you look at, as an investor in the gas business, right, to be able to secure funding to make your project bankable, you find out that part of a mechanism that you can use to cushion the effect of such costs, is to invest or to look at the opportunity of carbon credit trading to cushion the effect of the trade of your capital outlay. So what you can do is you have a situation whereby your project is registered under the United Nations Protocol for Carbon Trading, and you are able to afford, to capture carbon. You're able to demonstrate that you've captured so much tons of carbon dioxide in your own project in Africa or Nigeria, wherever it is. And then a counterpart project in Europe is able to flare gas or contribute to the environment, right? And buy the credits that you have captured, and pay you for such credits. So what I'm trying to bring out here is that there is an ecosystem, right, of value that is being traded, between. Sorry, can you still hear me? Okay, good. Yeah, there's an ecosystem of value that is going around, within the space, of gas monetization that is able to generate value for critical stakeholders across continents. Now, that is one. Now, within the local industry as well, right? Those who feel that, maybe, okay, you're creating or you're generating waste on the upstream end of the industry, right? A lot of initiatives that are being, put on the table, even within the context of the conversations we're having today, are essentially, looking at deliberate attempts at utilizing gas. Now, if you look at what legislation has failed to achieve in this country in the last 20 years, when I joined the industry, I heard stories of there must be gas flared out by the year 2000. There must be gas flared out by the year 2010. Justice, if you can remember, there must be gas, all those legislations failed. But at the end of the day, when they brought in a commercial flavor, right, and a commercial incentive to be able to stimulate commercial investment into the area of gas utilization and monetization, that is when we began to see results. And by so doing, what comes ready to mind is the Nigerian gas flare commercialization program, which essentially stimulated participation, the sort of participation that we even saw in marginal field bid rounds on the upstream side of the industry. So interested participants, investors who are in the midstream play in gas processing were now bidding for flared gas assets to be able to take over these assets, that are wasting flare points, putting money down, getting to collaborative partnerships, and trying to demonstrate to the regulator that they can actually generate value, and not just for themselves, but also pay royalties to the government, in the process of executing these projects. So I think the benefit here is that at the end of the day, when you look at the value chain, right, in the most recent 5 years, there has been a demonstration of the fact that we are getting to the realms of the fact that where the value that we see right now is not value that is being driven by a regulation that flare taxes or flare penalties is going to force oil and gas players to end gas flaring. No, but an effort that is going to be predetermined, by people investing in credible economic activity that is going to enhance or generate value for themselves. And that is why 20 years ago, IOCs will obviously pay off the flare tax and pass it on as their operating cost, operating expenses. And they don't care, business as usual. The gas place will still be there anyway because they pay the gas flare penalties. But now, those flares, I bet you, with the efforts of the likes of Justice and Co., they're going to disappear now because there is an incentive for you to invest money commercially to be able to generate a commercial value further down the line. Even in recent years, when we talked about you want to develop a marginal field, if you don't have a gas solution, you will not be approved. It still does not work, But I think what is happening closer to home now is exactly what is creating value for us. And I know it's been talked about, but I want to also mention it, right? That all of this still ties in to a just and equitable solution for energy transition for the African continent. Like Mr. Ayub mentioned, you cannot wish away the issue that we have in Africa. There is energy poverty in Africa. There is energy deficiency. If you do not deal with it, right, or if you don't have a special means of addressing it for all stakeholders across the value chain, then you cannot impose a big bang theory to transit the energy mechanism or the energy mix for Africa. You need to do it in slow baby steps, such that you can use gas as a means, as a cleaner energy means from the typical oil and gas deal with in fossil fuels, as a means towards an end in trying to achieve cleaner or renewable energy mechanisms. So I don't know, I hope I've been able to address it the way you wanted me to, but I'll stop at this point. So I will allow others to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let me read something out to you so you see that the audience gets it. So they said they agree with you about gas commercialization as a more viable solution for gas flaring than polluter pays. And my first question was really around how do we ensure that our end users, other stakeholders that really use our byproducts from the fossil fuel industry, how do we ensure that they also carry this same burden of proof on themselves in responsible usage, in responsible utilization of energy when it gets down, even in how we use our own lights in the house, and I think you touched on that. Thank you very much. So
I think we all need to just put our mouth where our put our money where our mouth is. I keep using this expression: smoke your own weed. You understand? If you say you want to deal with gas, want to promote gas, use gas-powered cars, buy fuel car. Even if you don't want a 100% gas car, use a gas that can use 40% gas, 60% diesel, or 60% petrol. So at least you know that you're getting there. It doesn't have to be all at once. Little baby step, not a big bang. That way we'll get there someday.
Thank you very much. Just to mention, the agreement in question was the Paris Agreement, where we talked about carbon trading. However, in terms of the credit source, it was under the Kyoto Agreement. But I know that there's a lot of conversation around carbon trading that is, I've been in forums where we discuss carbon trading, and some of us being African now still feel like it's not beneficial. And you just use the example the same way in the industry. If I can pay for something that I can emit and sell to someone else, then why bother? But I'm leaving that up to Amina. It's a good conversation to have if you like to have it across SPE again, and let's talk carbon trading. It will be a good one for your audience. My third question goes to Engineer Abdurrahman. Engineer, so I'm aware that, Engineer, can you confirm that you can hear me? Let me be sure that you're still here.
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. So I know that DPR recently, and of course now the NDPR recently launched the Maximum Economic Recovery Strategy. Right. Considering that this is to deliver on oil and gas production, is there a climate change mitigation component to this? And if there is it different from what we know in the NDC, the SLVC, as you said? Is it different, or we are looking or expecting a new set of regulatory policies that will guide this MER strategy? Please lend your thoughts to that.
Okay. Let me just start by saying one or two things concerning the clean development mechanisms which you have touched on. If you look at the Kyoto Protocol, it gave a lifespan for that particular activity. That CDM mechanism died in 2020. It's already moribund, and it's the Article 6 of the Paris Accord is going to take over, some of those institutionalized items which you have in the CDM protocol. Not minding the fact that, because as part of what we need to do as Africans, it was born out of the collaborations that we actually needed to do. So Africans needed to lend a voice, come together and present a common front, rather than developed world having to do all the discharges and emission, because they know that we are not yet up to that level of discharges and emitting in terms of GHGs. So what that will translate to is that we continue to be the dumping ground. They continue to produce as much as they can while using the carbon credit, to offset projects in this part of the world. So the African membership actually came together and presented a common front. And with that, the Article 6 of the Paris Accord is still being negotiated. That Article 6 is still being negotiated as we speak. But the Africans in the group needed to present something solid that we can use as a bargaining chip, in COP26, to ensure that we are not shortchanged in the entire scope of these clean development mechanism as we see it. So it's going to be a hard job, and it's something we should also be looking at in SPE as something to think about in the light of the ongoing information that we already have at our hand. As to the question, like I said, I'll be talking on behalf of both the authority and the commission. We, as an organization, though we are splitting into two, we have already started including in projects, many projects. I believe that when I was saying that, the internet already dealt with me, so people could not capture what I said during that, because I actually mentioned something in relation to that. When I looked up, I found out I was already off of the air. Right now, we have about 24 different gas projects that are at front-end engineering, detail engineering, construction, pre-commissioning, and with a total throughput of over 1 million scope. As a responsible government body charged with ensuring sustainable production of energy, quote unquote, oil and gas, and we also have the responsibility for over close to 200 million Nigerians. This industry provides livelihood. so to say, for these individuals, Nigerians, first and foremost, that's our major, that's our local government, that's our immediate constituency. And we are going to ensure that nobody is left behind. Just like it has been said, there's energy poverty, there's lack of access to energy. Through reduction in emission, energy efficiency, and provision and energy sustainability, we will deliver projects. We will be delivering projects from the inception of the accord that was signed by the president, and that has been the mandate given to us to ensure that these things are, dealt with. And we know, no matter how we try, I mean, as Africans, as Nigerians, if you look at the IEA report of 2019, emerging petroleum economy is just like was said, Angola, if you take Angola, you take Nigeria, and then upcoming country like Mozambique and all that, you can't tie these resources in the belly of the earth and expect the population that are currently trying to survive, to raise their head from endemic poverty, to stop, nip it in the bud, and go back and do what? This is the only means they have in order to ensure that these communities survive. And we intend to do that. We intend to do that by means ensuring that we produce energy in an efficient manner, in a cleaner and sustainable opportunity, in a cleaner way also. And we have the technology behind us. Technology has gone, beyond when the year 2020 that I alluded to, when the first proclamation was made that we are going to have flare out by the year 2010. I remember very well. Maybe Mr. he will know. We had the year 2000. It was a progressive proclamation. We had the year 2000 to knock off flares. And then, we decided, the year 2000 was not going to work. So it was raised, the bar, we raised the bar. Okay, because there was no legislative, teeth to that proclamation. So we kept on shifting the goalpost. Well, the PIA has really dealt with that right now, and we really have no choice, but to ensure that, well, through engineering design concepts, we are going to be ensuring that the use of pneumatic system pumps, glycol dehydrators driven by electricity and instrument here. And we also ensure that the use of dry seals, instead of wet seals.
And let me rein you in, please. Let me rein you in. So my question is this part of the MER or it remains as NDC? Because I know that the MER is a new strategy. So is this, are we looking at something different here, or this is what has been and we are just going to incorporate it into the MER? Just for that clarity, so that the industry, because they are well represented here, know that, the MER, even though it's for us to maximally exploit and produce our hydrocarbon, does not neglect on what we already have as strategies for mitigating climate action.
It is part of it. It is part of it. What we have, I don't need to bring that historical perspective into it, because if you look at the earlier submissions I made, there was this drive by the defunct DPR to ensure that we had zero flare. And the whole idea was to remove all GHG, methane, and all the other components of the greenhouse gas and nip them in the pot, because that was the only strategy we could look at as at that time. in terms of collaboration, also, you could see that the Sasol NMPC project was to deliver an associated gas utilization project that takes associated gas that was either to be flared relentlessly and convert it into money. So that process has always been embedded in part of the thoughts and some of the things that have been done internally. But there was no national document to ensure that this is done. So the MER is in line and is in the same tune with what the PIA document has given to us as Nigerians, because the commission now has powers that is embedded in it. It has taken up all the laws and regulations that were Petroleum Act, gas utilization, all the principal acts that were that were available in the past. All these have been unbonded. They have been onboarded into the PIA. So it's nothing new, really. It's just that in the PIA, it's going to be, the enforcement regime is going to be tougher, but it's going to be a business enabling strategy, and at the same time providing opportunities for us to grow, rather than emasculating us to the point of dying. Not to the point of killing our citizenry, but we continue to provide the energy. We continue to provide it in an energy, in a sustainable manner, efficiently and technologically driven. And the technology is already available, and what we are delivering going forward is really nothing new. We are only going to expand the scope of the implementation.
All right, thank you very much, engineer, and I like that last part. So it's nothing new. The industry is not expecting any kind of act or any documents. I mean, specifically for the climate change control, it is what that they have been advised already, and it's just really to bring it all in, even when we consider the MER plan.
Exactly. Maybe as a rider, if the last slide, just like I said, I was lost. During that presentation, the internet dealt with me. There was a slide I had, to show that currently there's a guideline that has been prepared for methane regulation. And I gave a synopsis of what that guideline contains. Leak detection and repair programs, measurement, MRVs are also embedded in that program. And also the key items of technology that will be used, low bleed pneumatic pumps, and all these other technologies that will be instituted to ensure that you do not continue to release methane into the space unabated. Are part of what that guideline is going to come up with. So the guideline is in the works and it's going to come out within the next few months. But it's already captured as part of the powers of the new Petroleum Industry Act. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, sir. So just to go quickly, we have questions in the. Amina, can you advise the how many more minutes we have here? Because I know our time is fast spent. How much time would you give us more?
I'm so enjoying this program that I'm tempted to just tell you to just carry go.
Our gentlemen, I'm sure their time are occupied. Yeah. So we'll run this very quickly.
I think we're really running out of time, and I think we have 15-20 minutes for questions and answers or so. Yeah, yes, maybe we had 10 minutes thereabout. Yeah, okay. I'm just enjoying this program so much.
Okay, so let me go to the final question that I have, then we'll take questions in the box. Engineer Derefaka, are you there? This question is for you. While I bring him up, I'm sure Mr. Ayuk is excited around the fact that, when Engineer Abdulrahman mentioned that we cannot tie our resources in the belly of the earth, there has to be, for people who are in big energy poverty, there has to be a way for us to be able to provide them access to energy sustainably, you know. So that's something that I wanted to highlight there. There has to be equitable solutions on how we bring energy for Africans by Africans, which I know that is something that you will consent to. Engineer Derifaka, are you there? If you're not there, I can move to the questions on the charts.
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Okay, great.
Right.
So, okay, your video isn't on. That's why I thought you were in here. Okay, so
it's on.
now I see you. Sir. Yes. I see you. All right. So now to policy. The Nigerian states is in the middle of a lot of things, and I know that some of it will not necessarily be your portfolio. We are in the middle of a pandemic. We are in the middle of lack of, you know, even access, security, and issues like that. We are even in a stage of depreciating energy supply. I hear gas, I hear, you know, all the great works that we've all said that we are doing. But do we truly have a strategy in place in terms of policy? And I know that we have the NDC. Do we truly have a just and equitable energy mix strategy in place? We may have gas. While we are rejecting this one dimension, singular pathway to global approach, is there something clear in the mind of the Nigerian states as to how we must combat this? Because our realities keeps changing. When this was muted the first time, when Mr. President alluded to it at the convention, we didn't have COVID as an example. We didn't have this depreciating energy supply. We didn't have security as priority as it is right now. How has all of these happenings changed or influenced the strategy that the Nigerian state is adopting? And to add to that, Mr. Ayuka said, Nigeria had better carry Africa along. What are your thoughts on that as well? So I yield the floor to you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think it's a very simple thing. So let me go back to my initial statement where I said, maybe let me bring it out clearly for all of us to see that in 2017, we are the 7th most populous nation on the face of the earth. By 2050, we'll be the 3rd, alongside 4 other African countries. That should scare us. Because what that means is that a lot of people will be moving to the city centers to live in, and there will be so much demand for energy. So as a government, what the federal government under President Buhari has done is that, yes, we'll keep looking at our oil. Where we have gas in abundance, we'll begin to open up the space. For over 16, 17, 18, 19 years, we were just rigmarole shifting the goalpost of the PIB, now PIA 2021. We lost several investments, in the sense that by now we'll have maybe gone way beyond to a great extent with our oil reserve, and we're now getting on with our gas. Have in mind, the 206.53 trillion cubic of gas we have is by accident. We're looking for oil when we find out. So our unproven gas reserve is 600 it's even more than 600. And by estimation, this will take us to over 230, 240, if not 300 years of our existence. That's how much gas we have in Africa. So when the developed world keep telling us that they don't want to fund fossil fuel, ladies and gentlemen, what comes to my mind is, tomorrow I have a young daughter, she's 11 years. She can ask the question that the Cambridge professor will ask. And she will remind me, when you were in government, what did you do, Daddy? That you didn't use your energy. And that's why I keep saying, we've made the mistake with our abundant coal deposit in Enugu. We didn't use it. This time around, the president, the the Honorable Minister of State Petroleum Resources, His Excellency Chief Receiver, my boss, and the TAC team where we are the foot soldiers. We are not resting on our oars. We have challenges. Don't get me wrong. But like the Honorable Minister will say, we can't do it alone. We need collaboration. We need partnership. And that's the message the minister is taking to IOC's event in Cape Town, South Africa. Africans need to sit down at the same table and agree to say we are one family. We have different mothers, but we have one father. Let's for once sit down together that we have the same DNA and sort our problem out. It's simple. The Honorable Minister gave a solution. He said he thinks that Africans should now have African Energy Bank. If we have an African Energy Bank, there are so many rich Africans that can put their money in that bank and will begin to invest in different parts of Africa. Now, I am a sustainability professional. I am not against renewables, never ever. But with the data that we have, with research carried out, renewables can only give you around 23, 24, 25%. Where will the remaining 80% come from? We have the highest population. Half of that African population that does not have energy is in Africa. There is energy poverty in the land. So government is not resting on its oars. The Honorable Minister, since the PIA was back, has been moving from one country to another and having investors to say, come in and invest. And the PIA is a game changer. Look at the provisions. Some pundits, some critics will say the PIA does not address all that we want. It's not 100% there. There are still gaps, understood, but it's better than nothing. It's a game changer. The midstream, downstream infrastructure fund alone will address so many issues. It will create jobs, it will build infrastructure, and at the end of it all, investors will come in and businesses will thrive. So these are the things the government is putting in place. Now, that is in the oil and gas space. When it comes to our nationally determined contribution, in the next 2-3 days, we're going to have a workshop on how, when we get to COP26 in Glasgow, we need to tell them to their face to say, you guys lied to us. So this climate change, energy transition, sprint race you are doing, it wasn't actually a sprint, it was actually a marathon. Because we knew that it was a marathon. Now you've activated your coal-fired plants because there is shortage of gas. You've now accused Vladimir Putin of Russia that is shortchanging supply of gas. And the man said that is rubbish. It's called Tito Tato, that they're just talking nonsense. Which means they were just trying to sell us technology for renewables. We need to have that in mind. And for me, like in line with what my minister always say, Africans need to come and collaborate and have that partnership. We can solve our problem. Look at what happened last year. There were lockdown. Supply chain were almost at a lockdown stage. But Africans, we were able to solve our problems ourselves. We should take a cue from what we've learned with the COVID shutdown, that indeed Africans, if we look inwards, with the after that we have, we can open up our borders and do businesses and thrive as a continent. And these, our brothers on the other side of the fence, will be coming here for vacation, for holidays. I tell you something, look at what is happening in Rwanda. God bless that country, God bless the president. Today, 3 of my friends in the university with me said their classmates, they are going to Rwanda for reunion. I said, how many states in Nigeria have you visited for reunion? They said they've been to Port Harcourt, they've been to Lagos, but they want to go to Kigali. I said, why Kigali? They said, man, that place is like overseas. That is what we should be doing now. Let's look at the templates that they use in Rwanda, replicate it for our gas industry, our oil industry, and change the narratives, and we can do it. Our problem, we're not bereaved of policy. Our problem is implementation. To have the political will, and that is what Mr. President has. I will stop here. Sorry, I'm speaking with passion because it's getting me.
That's all we need. I hope you'll be at the Africa.
You know how we do it. Because we need to change this story. We need to.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I like when you touched on the valiant move that Mr. Ayuk has made in crafting the Africa Energy Week, which will take place in South Africa come November. So good presentation as always. This is what I'm just reading from the chat here. The session has been enlightening. Thank you very much. I'd just like to read some few questions. Please indulge me. We'll make it short and sweet this time around. Everyone is, enjoying our conversation, but we also would like to respect your time. So, questions. What are the collaboration challenges and how do we navigate to overcome them? One, I don't know if I should say one sentence from each of you, maybe 1 point only, please, so that we can go around the 4 of you. I'd like that you chime in very quickly. Engineer Fagbami, it will be your turn first. Collaboration challenges.
Well, I keep saying it. You just need to walk our talk. It's not. It's less of wishful thinking. We just need to go, give a go at it, give it a stabbing, right? It's easier said than done, I must say. So when we say we want to collaborate, we really need to give a go at it, and it involves everybody, all stakeholders, like Justice has said, right? All the stakeholders, governments. I mean, all the countries in Africa. Africa as a network of countries. And even if you look at the industry, all the players in the industry, the academia, the regulator, the service companies, the producing companies, governments, finance institutions who are going to provide the money and all of them, they all need to be there and work together to make it happen. Thanks.
Indeed, walk our talk. Mr. Ayuk, quickly.
I think we shouldn't see more as a challenge. We should just get the will and get it done. We have the will, we should just continue finding ways. And if we focus on challenges, then nothing will happen.
All right, so okay. So let me change my question. I learned very quickly. So you say I shouldn't say challenges. I hear you. All right, so Engineer Abdurrahman, what would be the willpower we would need to make this implementation happen?
Well, from our own part and from my perspective, listening to Mr. Ayuk, Engineer Fagbemi, Justice Derefaka, former SPDC, we used to have this discussion across the aisle before. He was an IOC man, and I'll be at the other end challenging him. This needs to be done. However, you see, we are on both sides of the table right now. Discussing how we move forward. And that's part of what collaboration really means. We are not throwing punches at one another. But in those days, he used to say, "Go, I want to get him out of his job and all that." So it is a dynamic world, and you will understand going forward. It's everybody's piece of cake. We should not see it as a government job, whatever. Everybody, every individual has a stake, and that's why we should move forward. I personally, when I was living in Port Harcourt. When I was living in Port Harcourt for 22 or 23 years, I lived in Port Harcourt. I lived in the community. I didn't live in IA or RA or in the GRA. No, I lived among the people. And I remember every December, we used to contribute money to grade road, access road into where we live, to create access. And I did my borehole. I had solar panel on my roof in order to live a sustainable energy. I had a complete energy mix in my house. I had a solar panel. I had access to NEPA, which was never available. I also had a generator, which I sparingly, I determine when I use them. That's what it takes. We all have to put something in. We can't leave everything to the Rebecca. We can't leave everything to industry man, engineer, fireman. No. Everybody must come to the table and negotiate on how we move forward on this issue. Renewable energy is a choice. Okay. It's a choice. We can't have it hung on our head like a medal. Then we carry it like an albatross or a load that we. No. It's a choice we must embrace. And we must do this passionately because we all have a stake as denizens of the earth. It doesn't belong to Europeans or Americans, just like the statistics that have been provided. If the Europeans and the Americans decide not to run fossil fuel right now, we still have 80% deficiency on who will be those who need to be serviced. The population of the world is not static. It's 7.5 billion right now. In the next, by 2050, it's going to move to 9.5 billion. Those people are in the developing part of the world, and they need to be served. They need to be provided with energy. What we'll be thinking about is making sure that the energy we are selling to the world is clean, is sustainable, and of course, we minimize the impact of all these fossil fuel, rather than saying that we cut off and then everybody go and die. No, that's not the solution.
Okay,
thank you.
Clear. Thank you very much. So I hear you, everyone comes to the table, but importantly, it is also produce safe and sustainable energy. Engineer Jerry Faka, 1 minute, please. I just want you to speak on what is the willpower we need to make sure this collaboration really does happen.
I think in a very simple way, the way forward is one way to get this in across the table for people to be on the same page, because we need to have this in mind. We need to co-own, co-create, and celebrate the successes. So if you don't bring people to the table to be stakeholders in framing the solution to the problem, and you just go churn it out and say, hey, I made sandwich, come and have it. No, the guy like, I love to make sandwich. Why didn't you involve me in this? Because that is one key thing that is missing. People to sit at the table and agree on what we need to do together. And that's what we're taking to COP26. And that's what we're taking to African Energy Week in Cape Town, South Africa. Those are two international events that we want to pass the message across. In country, there are two additional events that will shape what happens in 2021, that will drive what will happen from 2022. The Nigerian Economic Summit, the conference is coming up. And the theme of the conference is securing our future, the urgency of now. So you can see that we don't even have time to play. Like I did mention, when it comes to climate change, when it comes to anything that has to do with the environment of planet Earth, there is no plan B. We have only plan A. Then the other thing for the teaming youth listening to me, because like my grandmother would say, she's still a youth. There is a youth conference coming up from the 1st to the 3rd of November, where issues, national thematic issues will be discussed. Let's equally meet and address and to say, this is the position of the youth. Government should partner, African leaders should partner and work. And one thing we are missing that we're not using very well that we need to do catch up with is the 4th industrial revolution, the digital age. That is very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Let me add one more to that event, and it is the NAPE conference, where we'll be discussing petroleum exploration and production in a new world. What next after the global crisis? This will happen in Lagos, and it will be November 14th to 18th. And I know that SPE and your humble office has been rightly invited. The last question for today, I have 2 more questions. Amina, please pardon me, but you can see the passion and the energy of our conversation. And underlining all of this is that we are all keen on ensuring that we deliver clean energy. However, we have to recognize energy poverty that currently resides in Africa while we bring our people out of it. Engineer Debo, this is for you. It says, Adrian Okpere says, taking on from what you have said and knowing that we are using gas as our transition fuel, everybody said that, do we see a market for extracting blue hydrogen from gas in flare sites and generating another value-driven ecosystem that supplements our gas transition strategy? So essentially, are we looking at extracting the blue energy from gas and then selling that as a different byproduct?
Yeah, I mean, natural gas has multiple streams of products, no doubt about it. And to be honest, at the moment, most players in the gas space in Nigeria, at least those, not talking of, in terms of domestic that are meeting domestic obligations for gas are focused on liquid products. You know, you look at flared gas and extract the heavy ends, that's the liquid products, and you produce LPG, the LPGs, and then the condensates, which essentially sold as crude. The lean gas, the lean component of it, right, is essentially used as pipeline quality gas, which goes into the power industry, you know, for power and as well as for industrial customers. But the interesting thing is that there are various methodologies and technologies that can be used to further synthesize additional product streams from that singular methane product. You can generate methanol from it, as well as even generate syn crude or synthesize the crude, including even optional PMS that you can even put into your vehicles. So there is enough space to play, you know, and that is why I said focus on R&D is a critical collaborative opportunity, you know, for those of us, you know, in the industry, you know, as far as boosting technology options goes, you know, for us in the industry. So definitely, you know, I agree with Adrian, you know, there is opportunity for us to look into that as long as it's technology. You know, technology space is what we are about in the industry. And I want to encourage everyone. NNPC, the National Oil Company, has an R&D division, right? And I believe it still exists. And those are the kind of areas that I want to encourage them to look at, you know, so that we don't just look at the traditional product streams, but look at other areas where we can actually maximize and optimize value, you know, as far as the product streams involved in natural gas conversion technologies are concerned. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Rightly said. So another question, but I think I'll wrap that up very quickly. So it says, Ibrahim Ilo says, one key aspect is funding for climate mitigation and adaptation. I would like us to chew more on funding and how best the midstream, downstream players and service providers can leverage and benefit from it to foster climate action. Just to recount, I know that Engineer Fagwemi mentioned it when I asked him the first question around how do we ensure that all of our stakeholders, you know, really also carry this burden of proof. But when it comes to funding, it has been buttressed here. We should be looking at Energy Bank, Africa Energy Bank, Nigeria Energy Bank, whatever, Equatorial Guinea Energy Bank. I guess that conversation is one of the most important discourse following if we have a plan, and we have all said that there is a grand plan in the scheme of things to help that. How can we ensure that the midstream and downstream player leverage on this? I'm not sure the word is leveraging. I think the word is they have to also be involved in crafting the solution. And I speak the mind of the gentleman here. Everyone must be involved. It's not a place of we can do it or some other people will do it and present the solution for us, because that's what even bettered this conversation in the first place. There is an impending pandemic, again, as Engineer Justice said, around the fourth revolution. And I find that very deep, really. Well, we won't open that up here. Thank you, gentlemen. That will draw us to the close of this presentation. Please, if we can give a e-clap to our erudite lecturers for today. This has been amazing. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Engineer Fagbami. Thank you, Mr. Ayuk. Thank you, Engineer Abdurrahman, and thank you, Engineer Durikafa. It's always a pleasure to hear you all talk, speak, share your passion, but importantly, play your major role in how we craft this solution. I will leave us with a few points just so we all understand why we are here. Mitigating energy, mitigating climate change is not a one-dimension conversation. It is a conversation that cuts across the world. There is the need for more and cleaner energy. I was going to say cleaner energy, but I hear the word more actually resonates more with us as Africa. We need more energy and we need that more to be cleaner. We must also stress the impact of this conversation around the environment. This is not the oil and gas problem. It is a global pandemic problem. And we must ensure that while we follow the Paris Agreement, we follow the UN Sustainable Development Goals, we must ensure that first, Africa is lifted out of poverty and we use what is African in creating the solution. It's on that note, I'd like to say thank you very much. It's never bye. It's see you around. Thank you, SPE, for having me. I hope this has been a great session. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you for having us.
Bye-bye, Mr. Ayok. Bye-bye, Fabian.
Thanks, Ayok. Yeah.
So over to you, Rekia or Amina. I'm not sure who is.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, our amazing moderator. Very distinguished participant, you will agree with me that our moderator did an amazing work. She did the amazing job of moderating the event. Please, can we give her an applaud on the comment section? Please applaud Mrs. Tumbosun Afolayan for the amazing moderation. Please, let's celebrate her. Thank you so much, ma'am. We at SP Abuja section say thank you for making our Independence Day lecture a success. Very quickly, we'll be switching gears immediately. We know our time is fast spent. So the very next item on our agenda, which is our industry personality of the quarter. And I believe my screen, which is shared, is seeing the industry personality of the quarter. And to handle this session, I'd like to most respectfully request our young professionals chairperson in the person of Engineer Rume Ogolu to take over the session.
Thank you, Mr. Akman, for the warm welcome. Good afternoon, all protocols duly observed. I believe everyone can hear me, right?
Yes, we hear you.
Yes, okay. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So this is a wonderful moment because last year we launched a program tagged Industry Personality of the Quarter in SPE Abuja section for us to recognize our senior members, distinguished professionals who have contributed greatly to SPE Abuja section, SPE Global, and also to the oil and gas industry. So this quarter, we want to recognize the great contribution of our erudite Professor Wumi Ledawe, to SPE and also to the oil and gas industry. Professor Wumi Ledawe has been recognized as the industry personality of the quarter for SPE Abuja section. So at this junction, I wanted to permit me to read the brief profile of Professor Wumi Ledawe. Professor Wumi Ledawe has over 40 years of technical, professional, and academic experience in the economics of oil and gas industry and the global oil and gas economy. Currently, it serves as Ghana National Petroleum Corporation Petroleum Research Chair in Oil and Gas Studies at the University of Cape Coast Oil and Gas Institute in Ghana. And he is the Executive Director of Emmanuel Egboga Foundation for Petroleum Industry Economics and Policy Advocacy in Abuja, Nigeria. He is an Emeritus Professor of Petroleum Economics at Louisiana State University, Energy Studies in the United States, and he was the SPE Director for African Region for the year 2019 to 2021. Professor Wumi Ledawe is the Shirota and Emmanuel Egboga Distinguished Professor and the former Director of Emerald Energy Institute at the University of Port Harcourt from the year 2013 to 2019. He is an expert in upstream petroleum economics, international petroleum and fiscal systems, economics and geopolitics, and economics of oil and gas resources and supply. Professor Ledawe holds a BSc degree in petroleum engineering with honors from the University of Ibadan, Nigeria, in the year 1979, and an MSc degree in energy economics from the University of Pittsburgh School of Engineering in the year 1985, and he holds a PhD in Energy and Mineral Economics from West Virginia University in 1990. He serves on the Nigeria National Assembly Technical Advisory Team on Petroleum Industry Reforms to the Joint Committee on Petroleum Industry B from the year 2005 to 2021. He is a distinguished fellow and the immediate past president of Nigeria Association for Energy Economics from the year 2015 to 2019. He is a senior fellow and the 2008 president of United States Association for Energy Economics and the 2014 president of the International Association for Energy Economics in Nigeria. Professor Wunmi Iledawe previously worked as petroleum and reservoir engineer for Shell Petroleum Development Company from the year 1980 to 1983, and he was a reservoir and production engineer trainee with Mobil Producing Nigeria from the year 1979 to 1980. And he has worked as an energy expert, energy specialist for the California Energy Commission. He has published several papers and works on upstream oil and gas economics and policy, and he ranked as among the top 500 Scopus authors in Nigeria for the year 2014 to 2020. So Prof has received several awards and for his outstanding contribution to petroleum engineering and also to SPE. So at this junction, I would want to say that on behalf of SPE Abuja section, I want to present this noble industry recognition to Professor Wunmi Iledawe as the SPE Abuja section industry personality for this quarter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rume Ogoleo. At this juncture, I would love to have a response from Professor Wunmi.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. It was a very brilliant session with respect to industry collaboration to mitigate climate change. I think presentations were very educative and informative. I certainly know that Nigeria does not like public policy development or public policy formulation, where we have not been able to overcome our leadership challenges is implementation. So I want to thank you very much for this opportunity to receive this recognition by you. I appreciate working with all of you. I'm also impressed with respect to how SPE Abuja, from its humble beginning, continues to make a wave. Let me also thank the Abuja section for their support when I was the SPE Africa Regional Director. You are young, I know you are young, and then you have young membership and perhaps young leadership, that you are making your wave. I'll continue to encourage you to think in terms of efficiency, effectiveness, and equity in governance. Overcoming climate challenges will not be an issue if we emphasize economic efficiency, economic effectiveness, and economic equity. One of the biggest challenges Nigeria has in being able to overcome challenges is sacrificing effectiveness, efficiency, and equity on the platter of, really for what I call political expediency. And I continue to make that noise. That's what we do at the Emmanuel Ebuga Foundation, advocating for efficiency, effectiveness, and equity in governance of the oil and gas sector. And to me, that's the only way to overcome the climate change mitigation. It's a technology issue. And the way to solve it is not to sacrifice petroleum resources or renewable energy. And I'm glad that we are speaking on the same voice now. My major challenge is the developed world, because they know how to captivate our leaders with what I call foreign aid. And that's why we became economic poor. They never give us to develop our own way to solve our problems. So they will give us foreign aid and we capitulate. I hope we are not going to do that this time and recognize that there are three things that are in competition. Competition in the sense that we need to solve them. I call them trilemma problems. Energy poverty is there. Climate change is there. But there's also economic poverty. And we just must put the three of them together. And I don't see petroleum being left out. We want to follow the optimal solution to energy poverty, economic poverty, and carbon emission. You cannot leave one out for the other in Africa. And I wish the leaders the best. Let them let go, in my opinion, what I call ESOS mindset and embrace what I call transformational agenda. God bless you and thank you for your recognition. Take care.
Thank you, Prof. Switching gears immediately, we would like to also inform all of our participants, those still online, that this is a clarion call that please you should join the Society of Petroleum Engineers Abuja section. I believe you enjoyed today's lecture, and if you did, you should be part of the SPE. We have the professional member benefits and we have the student member benefits. Of course, you can see it on the screen, which is shared. Should you want to join, kindly send an email to spabuja-sectioninfo@gmail.com or send an email to our membership chairperson, ike.okafor15@gmail.com, Dr. Ikechiku Okafor. On the screen also is all of our social media handles. This recording and our past event recording is live on YouTube. Kindly search SP Abuja section 119. And of course, you would access all of our videos. Of course, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram is where you would also find all of information from SP Abuja section. Now, speaking of membership, all registered members of SP Abuja section, we have a distinguished lecturer program, which is coming up on the 2nd of November, that's Tuesday by 5 p.m. Of course, we'll have Dr. Satyam Priyadisha speaking to us on digital disruption is essential for the oil and gas industry, the current state, challenges, and success roadmap. We advise that please register, and after registering as a professional or student member of the SPE, you would have access to this lecture. At this juncture, Your Excellencies, very distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we would be moving and ending this event with a closing remarks. Of course, a closing remarks is supposed to be taken by the program's chair of SP Abuja section, but he would be represented by the section secretary. Please help me welcome Mrs. Rekia Sambu, section secretary of SP Abuja section, for the closing remarks. Ma'am, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Akpan. Well, mine will be more of a vote of thanks, really. Can anybody hear me?
Loud and clear.
I can hear you. All right, thank you. So on behalf of the SP Abuja section, we would like to express a protestation of gratitude to all our speakers who have taken out time from their very busy schedules to be with us today and to involve themselves in such a beneficial cause. We appreciate the importance you have all attached to this topic and for joining your voice to this conversation. We hope and pray that we're able to deliver and ensure that going forward, we're looking at more cleaner energies and sustaining a better, cleaner energy in the future. I'd like to thank all participants who have also taken time to join us today. It's been a day very well spent. And I hope that next time we invite our speakers to join us in the section, you will kindly oblige us. Thank you very much. I wish everybody a very good afternoon and take care. Remember my safety brief, stay safe do not drink, do not text and drive, and then also try to also ensure you adhere to all the protocol, the COVID-19 protocols, which we all know that protocol kind of still exists. So thank you very much and have a good afternoon.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for participating, everybody. For a few minutes, we'll have a networking session, and after the few minutes of networking, would end the webinar. Thank you. I guess before the networking session, please, I would like to advise that we turn on our cameras for a quick photo session, please. Kindly turn on your camera. Let's have a quick photo session. Thank you. Turn on your camera. A quick photo session. Professor Adisa, we'd love to request that you turn on your camera. Thank you. Okay. On your camera. Okay, you can see our amazing moderator. And okay, thank you, Professor. Wadoko, so Lucy, thank you. Okay. And John, thank you so much. Networking session continues, please.
Thank you, everyone. It was really a wonderful program.
Thank
Madam
you,
Moderator, you were really amazing. Awesome. Well done.
Thank you, Mrs. Tumbosu. I shall be searching and looking for you very soon. Very sure for some mentoring and coaching.
And congratulations, Professor Iledare, on your award. Congratulations.